Hello, dear friends. So glad you could join us at Ben 10 What If. Today's narrative adventure is titled What If Ben 10 Had the Force and Omnitrix. We put our heart into every story we share. If you appreciate our work, showing some love with a like and subscribe would make our day. The story begins now. Chapter 1, Awakening. Ben Tennyson flopped onto his bed, exhausted after a long day of hero work. 3 Tekadon robots in one afternoon was pushing it, even for him. He stretched his arms above his head, the Omnitrix glinting in the afternoon sunlight streaming through his window. Man, I'm beat, he muttered to himself, closing his eyes for a moment. The familiar sound of his phone buzzing made him groan. Probably Gwen with some new alien alert. Couldn't the universe give him 5 minutes to catch his breath? Without opening his eyes, Ben reached toward his desk for the phone. His fingers grasped at empty air. Weird. He could have sworn he'd left it right there. Come on, he mumbled, reaching farther, eyes still closed. Something solid smacked into his palm. Ben's eyes shot open in surprise. His phone was in his hand, but he hadn't actually reached the desk. The phone had somehow traveled the 3 feet from his desk to his outstretched hand. What the? Ben sat up, staring at the phone like it might bite him. Did I just? The device buzzed again in his hand. Gwen's face appeared on screen with a text, meeting at Grandpa's RV in 20. Kevin found something weird. Ben shook his head, dismissing what had just happened as exhaustion playing tricks on his mind. He must have grabbed the phone without realizing it. No big deal. You're late, Gwen said as Ben jogged up to the rust bucket parked at their usual spot in Bellwood Park. Sorry, had to shower after the Tekadon smackdown. Ben waved his hand dismissively. So what's this weird thing Kevin found? Kevin leaned against the side of the RV, arms crossed. Energy readings off the charts about 10 miles north of here. Not DN alien, not hybrid. Something different. Grandpa Max emerged from the rust bucket, wiping his hands on a dish rag that smelled suspiciously of octopus. The plumber sensors picked it up too. Whatever it is, it's powerful and it's not in our database. Ben grinned, already reaching for the Omnitrix. So we check it out, kick some alien but if necessary, and I'm home in time for Sumo Slammer's marathon tonight. Sounds like a plan. Gwen rolled her eyes. It's not always about fighting, Ben. Says the girl who can throw energy discs that cut through steel, Ben shot back with a smirk. Children, Grandpa Max said in that tone that immediately made both cousins straighten up. This could be dangerous. We go in quiet, we observe, and we only engage if absolutely necessary. Ben nodded, though the familiar itch for action was already buzzing under his skin. Got it. Stealth mode. The energy signature led them to an abandoned quarry outside of town. Ben peered over a ridge of rock, squinting at the scene below. A small camp had been set up near the quarry wall, tents, equipment, and what looked like excavation tools. Doesn't look very alien to me, Ben whispered. Kevin picked up a small rock, examining it before tossing it aside. The energy's definitely coming from down there, though. And it's getting stronger. Gwen's eyes glowed briefly as she extended her awareness. There's something strange about this energy. It's not like mana, but it feels familiar somehow. Let's get closer, Ben suggested, already sliding down the ridge before anyone could stop him. The camp appeared deserted at first glance. Equipment left out, a half-empty coffee mug on a folding table, papers scattered by the wind. Ben approached the largest tent, pushing the flap aside to peek in. Maps and photographs covered a folding table. Archaeological tools were neatly arranged on another surface. Whatever was happening here, it wasn't your typical alien invasion. This is Dr. Jonah Melville's camp, Grandpa Max said, examining the research papers. He's an archaeologist. Used to work with the plumbers occasionally when artifacts with extraterrestrial origins turned up. So what's he digging for that's setting off all our alarms? Kevin asked, picking up what looked like a high-tech scanning device. A deep rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. Dust and small rocks tumbled down the quarry walls. "I'm guessing that might have something to do with it," Ben said, already running toward the source of the disturbance, a narrow crevice in the quarry wall that definitely hadn't been there before. The crevice pulsed with an eerie reddish light. As they approached, Ben felt something strange, a pull, like the site was calling to him specifically. "Ben, wait!" Gwen called, but he was already at the entrance. The narrow passage opened into a small chamber carved into the rock. In the center stood a man, presumably Dr. Melville, holding a glowing red pyramid-shaped object in his hands. The object's light seemed to pulse in time with the man's rapid breathing. "Dr. Melville?" Grandpa Max called out, stepping forward cautiously. "Remember me? Max Tennyson from the Plumbers?" The man turned, and Ben immediately knew something was wrong. Melville's eyes had a reddish tint to them, and he moved with an unnatural fluidity. "Max Tennyson," Melville said, his voice oddly calm despite the sweat beading on his forehead. "Perfect timing. You're just in time to witness history." "What is that thing?" Ben asked, pointing at the pyramid. Melville smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. "The key to humanity's evolution. I've spent years searching for it, a Sith holocron, a repository of knowledge from beyond the stars." "Put it down, Jonah," Max said, his voice taking on the authoritative tone Ben recognized from serious situations. "Artifacts like that can be dangerous." "Dangerous?" "No, Max, powerful." Melville clutched the holocron tighter. "It's shown me things. Taught me things. There's an energy field that connects everything in the universe. The holocron calls it the Force, and it's awakened something inside me." As if to demonstrate, Melville extended his hand toward a pile of excavation equipment. A shovel rose shakily into the air before clattering back to the ground. "Okay, that's new," Kevin muttered. Ben felt a strange resonance watching the demonstration, like déjà vu for something he'd never seen before. The sensation he'd experienced earlier with his phone flashed through his mind. "The holocron has chosen me," Melville continued, growing more agitated. "It needs a worthy vessel to bring this knowledge to Earth." "You don't look so good, Doc," Ben said, noticing the man's increasingly pale complexion and the tremors running through his body. "Maybe you should put the glowy pyramid down before it fries your brain or something." Melville's expression darkened. "You don't understand the gift I've been given." He thrust his hand forward. Ben felt an invisible wave slam into him, sending him flying backward into Gwen and Kevin. The three teens tumbled to the ground in a heap. "Okay, that's it," Ben said, activating the Omnitrix. "Time for..." "Ben, wait." Grandpa Max called, but Ben had already slammed his hand down on the device. Green light flashed as Ben's DNA reconfigured into the flaming form of Heat Blast. "Let's see how your fancy pyramid handles some heat." Melville's eyes widened at the transformation, but instead of fear, a disturbing fascination crossed his face. "Incredible. Your energy signature, it's unlike anything the holocron has shown me." Heat Blast formed a fireball in his hand. "Last chance to put down the glowy thing and come quietly, Doc." Instead of responding, Melville extended his free hand again. This time, Heat Blast felt an invisible grip around his throat, lifting him off the ground. "Hey! No, fair," he choked out, struggling against the invisible force. Gwen's pink energy disc sliced through the air toward Melville, forcing him to release Ben to defend himself. The archaeologist swept his arm in an arc, and the discs dissipated against an invisible barrier. Kevin, who had absorbed the stone floor, charged forward only to be stopped mid-run and hurled back against the cave wall. "This power," Melville whispered, looking at his own hand in wonder. "It grows stronger every moment." Heat Blast climbed back to his feet, flames intensifying with his anger. "Let's see you handle this." He thrust both hands forward, releasing a stream of intense fire. The flames surged toward Melville, then stopped midair, hovering inches from the man's face. Melville wasn't even touching them, he was simply holding his hand up, somehow keeping the fire at bay. "Impossible," Heat Blast muttered. "Ben!" Gwen called out. The ceiling. The heat from Ben's attack had weakened the already unstable rock above. Cracks spread rapidly across the surface as chunks began to fall. "Get out!" Grandpa Max shouted, pulling Kevin to his feet. Melville looked up, momentarily distracted by the collapsing ceiling. In that instant of broken concentration, Heat Blast felt something surge within him, a strange energy that seemed to flow through his fiery body. Acting on pure instinct, he thrust his hands forward again, but this time without flames. An invisible wave of force shot from his palms, catching Melville squarely in the chest. The archaeologist flew backward, slamming into the far wall and dropping the holocron. "What the?" Heat Blast stared at his own hands in shock. "Did I just?" "Ben! Now!" Gwen called as she created a mana shield above them to block the falling rocks. Shaking off his confusion, Heat Blast grabbed the holocron and ran for the exit. The team barely made it out before the entire chamber collapsed behind them. Outside in the quarry, Ben transformed back to human form, the holocron still clutched in his hand. "What happened in there?" Gwen asked, brushing dust from her clothes. "How did you do that without your flames?" "I don't know," Ben admitted, staring at the holocron. "It was like I felt something flow through me. Like what Melville was doing, but it came from inside me somehow." "And Melville?" Kevin asked, looking back at the sealed crevice. "There was a back passage," Max said. "I saw it just before we left. If he regained consciousness quickly enough, he might have escaped." Ben couldn't tear his eyes from the holocron. The red glow had faded now that it was in his hands, becoming more of a dull crimson. Yet he could still feel something emanating from it, a whisper of power that called to something deep inside him. "Ben," Grandpa Max said firmly, extending his hand. "I should take that. Plumber Protocol for Unknown Artifacts." Strangely reluctant, Ben hesitated before handing it over. "Yeah. Probably for the best." Max carefully wrapped the holocron in a specialized containment cloth from his pocket. "We need to figure out what this is and what happened to Melville. And Ben," he fixed his grandson with a serious look, "we need to talk about what you did in there." Ben nodded, flexing his fingers. The strange power he'd felt in the cave lingered like a ghost sensation. Whatever had happened, he had a feeling things were about to get a lot more complicated. Back at Plumber HQ beneath Bellwood, the holocron sat in a specialized containment unit. Ben watched through the transparent barrier as Plumber Tech scanned it from every angle. "It's definitely giving off energy," one tech reported to Max, "but it's nothing like we've seen before. Not quite radiation, not quite electrical. Almost psychic in nature." Ben flexed his hand again, remembering the surge of power he'd felt. Beside him, Gwen watched with concern. "You've been quiet," she noted. "That's never a good sign with you." Ben attempted a smile. "Just thinking." "Another first," Kevin quipped, joining them at the observation window. "Very funny," Ben replied. "I can't stop thinking about what happened in the cave. That push I did. It felt natural somehow, like I'd always known how to do it but just forgot until that moment." Gwen's expression grew thoughtful. "The way Melville was moving objects, it reminded me a little of my mana manipulation, but different." "Well, whatever it was, the doc seems to have gotten the hang of it pretty quick," Kevin said. "And if he escaped that cave-in, he's probably not too happy about us taking his new toy." Grandpa Max approached, his expression grave. "The scans are inconclusive. We're sending the holocron to a more secure facility for further study." "What about what happened with Ben?" Gwen asked. Max sighed. "That's more concerning. Ben, I'd like to run some tests. See if there's any residual energy from the holocron affecting you." "I feel fine," Ben protested. Better than fine, actually. And what I did in the cave, it didn't feel like something external affecting me. It felt like something, waking up. Max and Gwen exchanged looks. Humor me, Max said. Just a few scans. The medical bay of Plumber HQ was sterile and efficient. Ben sat on an examination table as a technician waved various scanning devices over him. Midichlorian levels are off the charts, the tech murmured. Midi what? Ben asked. The tech looked up, surprised, as if he hadn't meant to speak aloud. Oh, nothing. Just an old measurement system some of us older plumbers remember. Not really relevant anymore. Ben frowned, but before he could press for more information, the tech continued with other tests. After about 20 minutes of scans, blood samples, and reflex tests, the tech stepped away to confer with Grandpa Max in hushed tones. Ben's enhanced hearing, courtesy of years of relying on different alien senses, picked up fragments, natural ability, latent potential, and might need specialized training. Finally, Max approached. Well, good news is you're not contaminated with any harmful energy. And the bad news? Ben prompted, recognizing his grandfather's tone. Max hesitated. It's not exactly bad news. Just, complicated. Ben, it appears you might have a natural affinity for the same energy that Melville was tapping into through the holocron. You mean I can do that stuff naturally? Move things without touching them? Potentially, yes. The plumbers have encountered individuals with these abilities before, not many on Earth, but they exist throughout the galaxy. Some species have higher concentrations of these abilities than others. Ben grinned. So I've got superpowers even without the Omnitrix. Sweet. It's not that simple, Max cautioned. These abilities require training and discipline. They can be dangerous if not properly controlled. So train me, Ben said with a shrug. You've taught me tons of stuff before. Max shook his head. This is beyond my expertise. But. He hesitated again, I might know someone who can help. Let me make a call. Ben couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the strange energy thrumming through him. Twice he'd reached for his water bottle on the nightstand only to have it fly into his hand before he actually touched it. Around 3 a.m., he gave up on sleep altogether and transformed into Jetray, soaring into the night sky to clear his head. The cool air rushing past him usually helped him think, but tonight even flight couldn't settle his racing thoughts. Landing on the water tower that overlooked Bellwood, Ben transformed back to human and sat with his legs dangling over the edge. The town looked peaceful from up here, no alien invasions, no doomsday devices, just ordinary people sleeping in their beds, unaware of the battles constantly being fought to protect them. Couldn't sleep either, huh? Ben nearly jumped out of his skin at the voice behind him. He whirled around to see Gwen climbing the last few rungs of the water tower ladder. Don't do that, he complained. I almost went humongosaur and knocked this whole tower over. Gwen smiled, taking a seat beside him. Grandpa Max called. Said you've been stressing about the new abilities. I'm not stressing, Ben said automatically, then sighed. Okay, maybe a little. It's weird, you know. I'm used to getting new powers from the Omnitrix, but this is different. This is, me. Or something in me, at least. Gwen nodded. I get it. When my powers first started developing, it was scary. Exciting, but scary. They sat in silence for a moment, looking out over the town. Grandpa said he's bringing someone to meet us tomorrow, Gwen finally said. Someone who knows about these abilities. Yeah, he mentioned that. Any idea who? Gwen shook her head. He was being mysterious about it. Said it was complicated. Great, Ben muttered. Because we definitely need more complications in our lives. A police siren wailed in the distance, breaking the night's quiet. Both teens turned toward the sound instinctively. Want to check it out? Gwen asked, already knowing the answer. Ben grinned, the familiar rush of hero work pushing aside his worries. Race you there. The police were surrounding Bellwood First National Bank, lights flashing against the pre-dawn darkness. Ben and Gwen approached cautiously, staying hidden behind a nearby building. What's going on? Ben whispered to a police officer he recognized from previous hero work. Officer Parker glanced over, relief washing over his face at the sight of them. Bank's security system went off, but when we arrived, the doors were sealed shut from the inside. We've got people trapped in there, but we can't get to them. Any idea who's responsible? Gwen asked. Parker shook his head. Security cameras went dark right before the alarm. But dispatch just got a weird call from inside, someone demanding a helicopter and safe passage, or else. Ben turned to Gwen. I'll go high, see if there's roof access. You circle around back. Gwen nodded. Be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with. Ben activated the Omnitrix, cycling through his options. Going with Ghost Freak. Perfect for sneaking in unnoticed. He slammed down on the dial. Green light flashed, and instead of the ghostly form he'd selected, Ben found himself transformed into 4 arms. Seriously, he groaned. Now is not the time for your glitches, Omnitrix. So much for the stealth approach, Gwen said with a sigh. New plan. 4 arms cracked his knuckles, all 4 sets of them. I'll make my own entrance. You be ready to get the hostages out. Without waiting for a response, 4 arms charged toward the bank's main entrance. The reinforced doors stood no chance against his strength, bending inward with a screech of protesting metal. Inside, the bank lobby was dark except for emergency lighting. Overturned furniture and scattered paper suggested a struggle. 5 bank employees huddled in a corner, looking terrified. It's okay, 4 arms assured them. We're here to help. Where's the, I was wondering when you'd show up, Tennyson. 4 arms spun around to face the voice. Standing in the doorway to the bank vault was Dr. Jonah Melville, but he looked different from the day before. His skin was paler, and dark circles ringed his eyes. He wore the same dusty clothes from the excavation, but now a strange energy seemed to shimmer around him. Melville, 4 arms growled. Didn't get enough of a beatdown yesterday? The archaeologist smiled, the expression chilling rather than friendly. On the contrary. Our encounter was most educational. I've been practicing. To demonstrate, Melville lifted both hands. 2 massive marble counters ripped free from the floor and hovered in the air. Get the civilians out. 4 arms shouted to Gwen, who had entered behind him. The marble counters hurled toward 4 arms with frightening speed. He caught one with his upper arms, the impact forcing him back several feet. The second counter he had to dodge, the massive object smashing into the wall behind him. I've been studying you, Ben Tennyson, Melville called, walking forward with casual confidence. Your transformations, your tactics. But yesterday revealed something fascinating, you have the same potential I do. 4 arms charged, closing the distance between them in 3 massive strides. He swung a massive fist, only for Melville to sidestep with inhuman speed. Too slow, the archaeologist taunted. The force grants perception beyond normal senses. The term struck a chord in Ben's mind. The force. The word felt right somehow, like a key fitting into a lock. 4 arms felt something invisible wrap around his throat, lifting all 600 pounds of his tetrament form off the ground. He struggled against the grip, but there was nothing physical to fight against. You don't know what you're doing, he choked out. I know exactly what I'm doing, Melville responded, his voice eerily calm despite the strain showing on his face. The holocron showed me visions of what this power can achieve. With the Force, humans can evolve beyond our limitations. I'm just the first. 4 arms felt his transformation weakening as the oxygen deprivation affected his concentration. The Omnitrix symbol on his shoulder began to blink red. In that moment of desperation, something clicked inside Ben, the same energy he'd felt in the cave. Acting on pure instinct, he reached for that power, drawing it up from somewhere deep inside. With a roar that was as much mental as physical, for arms pushed outward with this energy. The invisible grip shattered, and a shockwave of force exploded outward from his body, sending Melville flying backward into the vault door. The Omnitrix timed out in a flash of red, leaving Ben in human form, gasping for breath but still standing. Melville staggered to his feet, blood trickling from his nose. His eyes widened in surprise and, strangely, delight. "You see," he said, wiping the blood away. "You feel it too. The power that connects everything." Ben took a fighting stance despite his human form. "Whatever this power is, you're using it wrong. It's hurting you, can't you see that?" Minor side effects of rapid advancement, Melville dismissed. "I've only had the holocron's guidance for a day. Imagine what I could achieve in a week, a month." "You won't get the chance," Ben said, reaching for the Omnitrix again. "We're taking you in." Melville laughed, the sound edged with mania. "Not today, Ben Tennyson. But we'll meet again soon. After all, we're both students of the Force now." Before Ben could transform, Melville thrust both hands downward. The floor beneath him exploded upward, sending debris flying in all directions. By the time the dust cleared, a large hole revealed access to the sewer system below, and Melville was gone. Gwen rushed back in, having evacuated the hostages. "Ben. Are you okay?" Ben nodded, still staring at the hole in the floor. "Yeah. But Melville got away." He looked at his hands, still feeling the echo of the power he'd unleashed. "And he called it, the Force." By the time they returned to Plumber HQ, the sun was rising over Bellwood. Ben felt exhausted but wired, unable to calm his racing mind. The fight with Melville had confirmed what he'd suspected: this new power wasn't a fluke or a temporary effect from the holocron. It was something inside him, something that had always been there, waiting to be awakened. Grandpa Max met them in the briefing room, his expression grim. "I heard about the bank. Melville's escalating quickly." "He's different from yesterday," Ben said, accepting the cup of hot chocolate Max handed him. "Stronger. More controlled. But also, I don't know, there's something off about him. Like he's burning too hot." The holocron may have activated his abilities, but without proper training, he could be damaging himself, Max agreed. The energy readings from the bank were even higher than those at the quarry. "He called it the Force," Ben said. "The power he's using. And he knew I could use it too." Max nodded slowly, as if coming to a decision. "I suspected as much. That's why I called in an expert." He checked his watch. "She should be here any minute." "She?" Kevin asked, perking up. As if on cue, the briefing room door slid open. A woman entered, tall, slender, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She appeared to be in her 60s but moved with the fluid grace of someone much younger. Her eyes, a striking amber color, immediately locked onto Ben with an intensity that made him sit up straighter. "Benjamin Tennyson," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent Ben couldn't place. "I've been wondering when our paths would cross." "Kids," Max said, "this is Tetra Nova. She's an old friend. And she knows more about what you're experiencing than anyone else on Earth." Tetra approached Ben, her gaze never wavering. "May I?" she asked, extending her hand. Ben glanced at his grandfather, who nodded reassuringly. Sure," he said, holding out his own hand. Instead of taking it, Tetra held her palm a few inches above his. Ben immediately felt something, a gentle pressure, like ripples in a pond spreading between them. "Remarkable," Tetra murmured. "Strong in the Force, just as Maxwell described. And untrained, yet already manifesting abilities. The Force," Ben repeated. That's what Melville called it too. Tetra's expression darkened. This Melville, he found a holocron, yes. Pyramid-shaped, red crystal. Yeah, how did you know? A Sith holocron, Tetra said grimly. A repository of dark knowledge. If he's accessing its teachings without proper guidance, he's placing himself in grave danger, and everyone around him. Dark knowledge? Gwen asked. Like dark magic? Not magic, Tetra corrected gently. The Force is an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together. Some are born with a natural connection to it, the ability to sense and manipulate it. And I'm one of those people. Ben asked. Tetra nodded. One of the strongest natural connections I've felt in decades, actually. It's not entirely surprising, given your connection to the Omnitrix. Your constant exposure to different alien DNA may have awakened latent abilities that would otherwise have remained dormant. So what exactly can Ben do with this Force? Kevin asked. Besides throwing people around without touching them, which, not gonna lie, is pretty cool. With training? Many things, Tetra said. Telekinesis is only the beginning. Enhanced perception, combat precognition, physical augmentation. Some can even influence the thoughts of the weak-minded. Ben's eyes widened. Seriously? That's awesome. It is also a grave responsibility, Tetra said sharply. The Force is not a toy, Benjamin. It responds to emotions, both positive and negative. Fear, anger, hatred, these emotions can twist the Force into something dangerous. That's the path you're Dr. Melville is walking now, drawing on the dark side of the Force through that Sith holocron. Dark side? Gwen asked. So there's a light side too. The Force itself is neutral, Tetra explained. It's how we access and use it that determines its nature. Peace, knowledge, serenity, these lead to what many call the light side. A Jedi path. Jedi? Ben interrupted. Like from that old movie series. For the first time, Tetra looked uncomfortable. She glanced at Max, who nodded encouragingly. Not exactly, she said carefully. Though I suspect George Lucas may have encountered someone like me during his career. The truth is, Benjamin, I was once a Jedi Knight, from a galaxy far from your own. The room fell silent as the teens processed this. You're saying you're an alien? Kevin finally asked. From another galaxy? I was born on a planet called Chandrila, Tetra confirmed. I came to Earth decades ago, after the fall of the Jedi Order. I've lived here in secret ever since, watching for others with Force sensitivity. And now you've found Ben, Gwen said, putting the pieces together. Indeed. Tetra turned back to Ben. I can teach you to control these abilities, Benjamin. To understand the Force and use it wisely. But I must warn you, the path is not easy, especially for someone already bearing the responsibility of the Omnitrix. Ben looked down at the alien device on his wrist, then back up at Tetra. Part of him wanted to make a joke, to brush off the seriousness of the moment as he often did. But something, perhaps the Force itself, told him this was a turning point. I want to learn, he said simply. Tetra nodded, a small smile breaking through her serious demeanor. Then we begin now. Your friend Melville grows stronger by the hour, drawing recklessly on powers he doesn't understand. We have little time. Tetra insisted on training outdoors, away from technology and distractions. They gathered in a clearing in the woods outside Bellwood, Ben, Gwen, Kevin, and their new mentor. Grandpa Max had stayed behind at Plumber HQ to coordinate the search for Melville. First, you must understand what you're feeling, Tetra explained, sitting cross-legged on the ground and motioning for Ben to do the same. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Reach out with your feelings, not your senses. Ben tried to follow her instructions, though sitting still had never been his strong suit. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to focus. I don't feel anything, he admitted after a minute. Just, normal stuff. The breeze, birds chirping, Kevin tapping his foot impatiently. Hey! Kevin protested. Ignore the physical, Tetra guided. The force exists between and within all things. Feel the connections, the life of the trees, the energy of your friends, the pattern of existence that binds it all together. Ben tried again, pushing past his initial frustration. This time, he let his mind drift, not focusing on any one thing. Gradually, something shifted in his perception. It wasn't visual or auditory, more like a new awareness blossoming in his mind. I feel something, he said hesitantly. Like threads connecting everything. It's hard to describe. That's it, Tetra encouraged. That's the force flowing around you and through you. Now, reach out to it. Don't try to control it, invite it. Ben extended his awareness along one of these threads, following it outward. Suddenly, the sensation exploded into clarity. He could feel everything, the trees pulsing with slow life, small animals darting through the underbrush, the distinct energy signatures of Gwen, Kevin, and Tetra nearby. Most surprisingly, he could feel the Omnitrix as a nexus of possibilities, each alien form a different pattern in the force. Whoa, Ben breathed, his eyes still closed. This is incredible. Ben. Gwen's voice sounded concerned. Are you okay? You're glowing. His eyes snapped open. A faint blue aura surrounded him, dissipating as his concentration broke. Was I doing that? Tetra nodded, looking impressed. The force manifests differently in everyone. Your connection to the Omnitrix creates unique interactions. Now, for a practical application, she gestured to a small rock near Ben's foot. Lift it. Not with your hand, with your mind. Remember how it felt when you pushed Melville away? That same energy can be controlled, directed. Ben focused on the rock, extending his hand toward it instinctively. Nothing happened. Don't try to force it, Tetra advised. Feel it. The rock is connected to you through the force. You're not commanding it to move, you're redirecting the energy that already flows between you. Ben tried again, closing his eyes and seeking that connection he'd felt moments ago. There, the rock existed as a node in the web of energy. He visualized the threads lifting, carrying the rock with them. When he opened his eyes, the rock hovered 6 inches above the ground, wobbling slightly with his breathing. I'm doing it, he exclaimed, and promptly lost concentration, the rock dropping back to earth. Very good for a first attempt, Tetra said with an approving nod. Most take days to achieve even that much control. So this is how Melville was throwing stuff around at the bank, Kevin observed. Gotta admit, it's a handy trick. It is far more than a trick, Tetra corrected. The force is not merely telekinesis. It enhances all aspects of one's being when properly aligned. She stood in a fluid motion and picked up a fallen branch, tossing it to Kevin. Attack me. Kevin looked uncertain. You sure? I mean, no offense, but you're not exactly, Tetra raised an eyebrow. Not exactly young. I assure you, I am quite capable. Kevin shrugged, grabbed the branch, and lunged forward with a simple overhead strike. What happened next left all 3 teens staring in amazement. Tetra moved like water, sidestepping the attack with such precision it seemed she knew where Kevin would strike before he did. She tapped his wrist with 2 fingers as he passed, causing him to drop the branch, then swept his legs from under him in the same motion. Kevin hit the ground hard, blinking up at the sky. What just happened? He asked, dazed. The force guides my actions, Tetra explained, helping him up. It shows me possibilities moments before they occur. With training, Ben will develop similar instincts, especially useful during combat. Ben grinned. So basically, I'm getting spidey sense on top of the Omnitrix. Sweet. Your enthusiasm is commendable, Tetra said dryly. But remember, the Force is not a toy or a weapon. It's a responsibility. The same power that allows me to anticipate an attack can be twisted to choke the life from someone. Always be mindful of your intentions. The sobering thought reminded Ben of Melville's attack at the bank. Speaking of which, shouldn't we be looking for Melville? He's getting stronger, and he seemed pretty unstable. Tetra nodded. Indeed. But confronting him untrained would be foolish. You need at least basic defenses against Force abilities. What about me? Gwen asked suddenly. She'd been watching the training with intense focus. I can sense something too, when Ben was connecting to this Force. It's similar to mana, but different. Tetra turned to Gwen, studying her with new interest. Your energy manipulation abilities, they stem from your Anodite heritage, yes? Maxwell mentioned it. Gwen nodded. My grandmother was an Anodite. Fascinating, Tetra murmured. Anodites naturally manipulate energy in ways similar to Force users, though the source is different. You may indeed have a dual sensitivity, to both mana and the Force. So I could learn this too? Gwen asked, hope evident in her voice. I believe so, though your approach would differ from Ben's. Your existing training gives you an advantage in some ways, a challenge in others. Tetra gestured for Gwen to join them. We'll explore this further. For now, let's continue with the basics. For the next 2 hours, Tetra put both cousins through exercises that seemed simple on the surface but required intense concentration. Lifting small objects. Sensing each other's presence with eyes closed. Reading the movement of air currents. Kevin, after recovering his pride from the earlier demonstration, took to observing and occasionally serving as a practice target. By mid-afternoon, Ben was mentally exhausted but exhilarated. He'd managed to consistently lift objects the size of a backpack, sense approaching movement from 20 feet away, and even deflect small pebbles Kevin tossed at him without looking. Your progress is remarkable, Tetra said as they took a break. Both of you. But remember, what you've learned today is merely the foundation. True mastery takes years. Years we don't have if Melville keeps getting stronger, Ben pointed out, taking a swig from his water bottle. We need to find him before he hurts someone. As if on cue, Ben's phone rang. The caller ID showed Grandpa Max. Grandpa? Any news on Melville? Max's voice came through urgent and clear. We've got him. Energy signature just popped up at Bellwood Power Station. Massive spike, way bigger than before. Ben was already on his feet. We're on our way. Ben, Tetra cautioned as he ended the call. You're not ready to face someone using dark side techniques. Even with the Omnitrix, people are in danger, Ben said firmly. Ready or not, I have to try. Tetra studied him for a moment, then nodded. Then we go together. But promise me you'll be cautious. The dark side feeds on aggression and recklessness, exactly the emotions Melville will try to provoke in you. I promise, Ben said, activating the Omnitrix. Now let's go introduce Dr. Melville to a different kind of force. Bellwood Power Station was in chaos. Emergency vehicles surrounded the perimeter, and frightened workers streamed away from the main building. The air hummed with unstable energy, making the hair on Ben's arms stand on end. He's attempting to draw power from the electrical grid, Tetra said grimly as they approached. Amplifying his abilities artificially, a dangerous shortcut. Why would he do that? Gwen asked. You said the force is in everything already. Desperation. Impatience. The dark side promises quick power at great cost. Tetra's expression was grim. He's burning himself out, but he'll be extremely dangerous until he does. They reached the main security checkpoint, where Grandpa Max was coordinating with plumber agents disguised as emergency responders. He's barricaded himself in the main control room, Max reported. Cut off remote access to the systems. He's redirecting power throughout the facility in patterns we can't predict. What's his endgame? Kevin asked. Based on the messages he's sending to the emergency broadcast system, he wants to demonstrate his power to the city, Max said. Says he's going to create a beacon of energy that will awaken others like him. If he destabilizes the reactor trying to channel that much power. Gwen began. Half of Bellwood goes up in smoke, Kevin finished grimly. Ben studied the facility layout on a nearby monitor. I need to get in there. Ghost Freak could phase through the walls, get close enough to, no, Tetra interrupted. That's exactly what he wants. He'll sense your approach, no matter what form you take. The Force gives him awareness beyond normal senses. So what do we do? Stand here and wait for him to blow up the city? Ben demanded. No. Tetra closed her eyes briefly, her expression becoming centered and calm. We give him what he wants, confrontation, but on our terms. She outlined a plan quickly. Ben would approach openly, drawing Melville's attention as Gwen created a perimeter to contain any energy discharge. Kevin and the plumbers would evacuate any remaining personnel. And Tetra would approach from another angle, using her decades of experience to mask her presence in the Force. Remember, she told Ben quietly as they prepared to move out, Melville will try to provoke you, to make you fight with anger. That gives him an advantage. Stay centered. Trust the Force to guide your actions, not your emotions. Ben nodded, activating the Omnitrix. After cycling through options, he selected Big Chill. The moth-like alien's phasing abilities would give him defensive options without relying on brute force. As the transformation completed, Ben felt something unexpected. His awareness in the Force didn't diminish but changed, taking on qualities that matched Big Chill's nature. The world appeared as patterns of heat and energy, life force flowing through the structure around him. Interesting, he whispered, his breath visible even in Big Chill's form. What is it? Gwen asked. The Force feels different as Big Chill. Not weaker, just shifted. Like I'm seeing it through a different filter. Tetra nodded. Each of your transformations will have a unique relationship with the Force. In time, you'll learn to use these differences to your advantage. No time like the present, Big Chill said, spreading his wings. Let's do this. The plan went into motion. Big Chill flew toward the main entrance, making no attempt to hide his approach. Gwen circled around, creating mana barriers at strategic points. Kevin, after absorbing the metal from a nearby transformer, joined the plumbers in clearing the remaining sections of the facility. As Big Chill phased through the main doors, the temperature dropped dramatically. Ice formed on the walls and floor, not from his powers, but from the extreme energy differentials in the air. Melville. He called out, his voice echoing through the facility. This has gone far enough. You're hurting yourself and endangering innocent people. The response came not as words but as a wave of pressure that slammed into Big Chill like a physical blow. Even phasing didn't fully protect him, the attack targeted his energy pattern, not his physical form. Ben Tennyson, Melville's voice echoed from speakers throughout the facility. I was hoping you'd come. Did you bring your new teacher? I sensed another presence earlier, someone strong in the Force. Big Chill pushed forward, following the energy fluctuations toward the control center. You need to stop this, Melville. The holocron is destroying you. I can feel it. A harsh laugh answered him. Destroying? No, it's transforming me. Every hour I grow stronger, more attuned to the Force. Soon I'll be able to extend this gift to others, starting with Bellwood. Big Chill phased through another wall, finding himself in a large open area filled with transformers and control panels. In the center, floating several feet off the ground, was Melville. The archaeologist had changed dramatically since their encounter at the bank. His skin was now bone white, with dark veins visible beneath. His eyes glowed with an unnatural yellow light, and electricity seemed to dance across his skin. What have you done to yourself? Big Chill whispered. I've transcended, Melville said, his voice distorted by the energy surging through him. The holocron showed me techniques to channel power directly from electrical sources into force energy. A shortcut, perhaps, but effective. It's killing you, Big Chill said, feeling the truth of it through the force. Melville's life energy was burning too bright, too fast, like a star about to go supernova. A small price for evolution, Melville dismissed. He gestured, and a console nearby exploded in a shower of sparks. Besides, I won't need this body for long. Once I've created enough force energy, I can transfer my consciousness into a more suitable vessel. Perhaps even into one of your alien forms, Tennyson. The threat sent a chill through Ben that had nothing to do with his current form. He needed to end this quickly. Drawing on his brief training, Big Chill reached out through the force, seeking the connections between Melville and the energy he was channeling. There, like burning threads tying the archaeologist to the power systems of the facility. Big Chill exhaled, his breath supercooled by both his alien biology and his nascent force abilities. The cold swept toward Melville, not aiming for his body but for the energy connection surrounding him. Melville's eyes widened in surprise as ice formed along the threads of power, disrupting the flow. Clever, he acknowledged. But futile. With a gesture, he shattered the ice and sent the fragments hurling back toward Big Chill. Ben phased instinctively, but some of the ice, charged with Melville's force energy, still struck him, sending pain shooting through his ethereal form. You can't beat me, Ben, Melville called, descending slowly to the floor. Not alone. Not without embracing the power I've found. Join me. Together we could remake this world. Big Chill rose back to his full height. Hard pass on the join me speech. I've heard better versions from way scarier guys than you. Anger flashed across Melville's face. Then die with the rest of this city. He thrust both hands toward the ceiling, and the entire facility trembled. Warning alarms blared as the power reactor began to overload. Big Chill knew he had to act fast. Flying straight toward Melville, he phased through the first wave of electrical discharge the archaeologist sent his way. The second wave caught him partially, sending him spiraling off course. Melville laughed. Your alien abilities are impressive, but they're nothing compared to the power of the dark side. As he prepared a third, more powerful attack, Big Chill felt a subtle shift in the force around them. A calm presence entered his awareness. Tetra had arrived. The former Jedi made no dramatic entrance. She simply stepped from the shadows behind Melville, her hand extending in a subtle gesture. The archaeologist froze mid-motion, suddenly struggling against an invisible grip. Enough, Tetra said, her voice quiet yet carrying absolute authority. You've gone too far down this path, but it's not too late to turn back. Melville strained against her hold, veins bulging in his forehead. What are you? Someone who walked your path long ago and found it wanting, Tetra replied. The dark side offers quick power, but it destroys everything it touches, including its wielder. With a scream of rage, Melville broke free of Tetra's hold, sending a shockwave of energy outward that knocked both her and Big Chill back. The facility's lights flickered wildly as he drew more power. I don't need your wisdom, old woman. The holocron has shown me true power. Big Chill looked to Tetra, who gave him a subtle nod. Understanding flowed between them through the force. They needed to sever Melville's connection to the facility's power. Drawing on his training, Big Chill reached out through the force again, this time not seeking to attack Melville directly but to feel the connections between him and the power systems. They manifested as burning threads in his force perception, pulsing with unstable energy. Transforming back to human form, Ben surprised Melville with the sudden change. In that moment of confusion, he activated the Omnitrix again, this time becoming Diamond Head. Let's see how you handle this. Diamond Head shouted, slamming his crystalline fists into the floor. Crystals spread rapidly across the ground, climbing up the equipment Melville was drawing power from. But these weren't ordinary crystals. Ben was channeling his force energy through them, creating a barrier between Melville and his power source. "No!" Melville cried, feeling the connection weakening. He lashed out with lightning that arced from his fingertips, but Diamond Head's crystalline body absorbed and redirected it into the growing crystal formation. Tetra moved with preternatural speed, circling behind Melville. Her hands wove complex patterns in the air, and Ben felt her manipulating the force to contain and diminish Melville's power. "It's over, Melville," Diamond Head said, continuing to expand the crystal barrier. "You've got two choices, stand down, or get taken down." For a moment, it seemed like the archaeologist might surrender. The yellow glow in his eyes flickered, revealing glimpses of the man he'd been before. Then his expression hardened. "I won't go back to being nothing," he snarled. Raising both hands, he summoned all his remaining power for one desperate attack. The energy built to impossible levels, electricity arcing wildly across the room. Warning lights flashed as the reactor approached critical failure. "Ben!" Tetra called. "Now!" Understanding her intent through their force connection, Diamond Head channeled all his concentration into one massive crystal formation. It rose from the floor like a wave, surrounding Melville completely. Inside the crystal prison, Melville's attack discharged, but with nowhere to go, the energy turned inward. There was a blinding flash, and the crystal structure shattered outward. When the light faded, Melville lay unconscious on the floor, the unnatural color fading from his skin. The facility's alarms quieted as the reactor stabilized. Diamond Head approached cautiously, the Omnitrix timing out and returning him to human form. "Is he alive?" Tetra confirmed, kneeling beside the fallen archaeologist. "But severely damaged by his misuse of the force. He'll need specialized care." Ben sighed with relief. "What about the holocron? Could he have hidden it somewhere?" "The holocron was merely a catalyst," Tetra explained. "Once awakened, his abilities came from within. But we should locate it nonetheless, such artifacts are too dangerous to leave unattended." Gwen and Kevin burst into the room, ready for battle, only to find it already over. "Did we miss the party?" Kevin asked, looking disappointed at the lack of ongoing combat. "Just the cleanup," Ben said with a weary smile. "And we've got plenty of that to do." 2 days later, Ben sat cross-legged in Tetra's small apartment on the outskirts of Bellwood. The space was sparsely furnished but peaceful, with plants on every windowsill and strange artifacts carefully displayed on shelves. "Focus," Tetra instructed, observing as Ben attempted to disassemble and reassemble a complex puzzle box using only the force. "Feel each component, its relationship to the whole." Ben concentrated, sweat beading on his forehead as the box hovered between his hands, pieces slowly separating in midair. "I still can't believe you've been on Earth all this time," he said, trying to maintain focus on the exercise. "How many others like you are there?" "Few," Tetra admitted. "Most who escaped the purge sought isolation. Some may not have survived the decades since. And this empire that hunted you. Are they still out there? In your galaxy?" Tetra's expression grew distant. "I don't know. I've been cut off from my homeworld for many years. The last I knew, the Empire's grip was absolute. But things change. Tyranny breeds rebellion." The puzzle box wobbled as Ben's concentration slipped. With effort, he stabilized it, continuing to manipulate the pieces. "Do you ever think about going back? Now that you know there are force-sensitive people here you could help." "Perhaps, someday," Tetra said thoughtfully. "But for now, my place is here. You have remarkable potential, Benjamin, but your dual gifts, the Omnitrix and the Force, create unique challenges. And unique opportunities." Ben nodded, carefully slotting the final piece of the puzzle box back into place. The completed box gently descended to the table between them. "What about Melville? Will he recover?" "The plumbers have placed him in a specialized containment facility," Tetra said. In time, with proper guidance, he may find balance again. But the dark side leaves scars on body and mind alike. Ben absently touched the Omnitrix. And the holocron? Secure. Maxwell has arranged for it to be stored in a location where its influence can't reach vulnerable minds. Tetra leaned forward slightly. But there may be others out there, both artifacts and individuals with latent sensitivity. Your presence in the Force is distinctive. It may draw attention. Just what I needed, more bad guys gunning for me, Ben said with a wry smile. But I guess that's nothing new. Tetra's expression softened. You bear much responsibility for one so young. The Omnitrix alone would be a heavy burden. Now the Force adds to that weight. I can handle it, Ben said with characteristic confidence. Yes, Tetra agreed, surprising him. I believe you can. But remember, a Jedi never stands alone. The Force connects all living things, and you have friends and family who support you. That is a strength, not a weakness. The apartment door opened as Gwen arrived for her own training session. Her control was developing differently from Ben's, more precise but less powerful, influenced by her years of mana manipulation. Am I interrupting? She asked, noting their serious expressions. Not at all, Tetra said, rising gracefully to her feet. Benjamin was just completing today's exercise. Ben stood as well, stretching muscles stiff from sitting still so long. All yours, cuz. I've got patrol with Kevin in 20 minutes anyway. As he headed for the door, Tetra called after him. Remember your breathing exercises tonight, Benjamin. And be mindful of your emotions during patrol. Yes, Master, Ben said with a mock salute, though the respect in his voice was genuine. As he stepped outside into the afternoon sunlight, Ben felt the Force flowing around him, through the trees lining the street, the birds overhead, the people going about their daily lives. And for a moment, he sensed something else too, a vast network extending beyond Earth, beyond their solar system, connecting him to a legacy he was only beginning to understand. Whatever challenges came next, he would face them with both the Omnitrix and the Force as his allies. And that combination, Ben thought with a smile, was going to be absolutely epic. Chapter 2, Convergence. 3 months flew by faster than XLR-8 on a sugar rush. Ben stood on a rocky outcropping overlooking Bellwood, eyes closed, 5 small boulders hovering in perfect formation around him. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he concentrated on maintaining both the levitation and the precise geometric pattern Tetra had specified. Your focus has improved, Tetra noted from where she sat cross-legged nearby. But I sense your mind wandering. Ben sighed, carefully lowering the boulders to their original positions. Sorry. Got a text from Julie earlier. She's back from her tennis tournament tonight. A smile touched Tetra's lips. Ah. Matters of the heart often disrupt concentration. Even the most disciplined Jedi were not immune. It's not like that, Ben protested automatically, then caught himself. Okay, maybe it is. But we haven't seen each other in weeks. Tetra rose to her feet in one fluid motion. Then perhaps we should conclude today's training early. Achieving balance in all aspects of life is also part of the Jedi way. Ben brightened. Seriously? You're not going to make me restart the exercise 15 times. You have earned a respite. Your progress these past months has exceeded expectations. Tetra gestured toward the city below. 3 months ago, lifting a single rock exhausted you. Now you maintain complex patterns while holding conversation. Ben grinned. Yeah, well, having a good teacher helps. Plus, Gwen's been making me practice even when you're not around. She's kind of intense about it. Your cousin's approach to the Force is methodical, Tetra acknowledged. She applies the same disciplined study she gives her magic. Your strength comes from a different place, intuition, adaptation. Ben nodded, understanding what she meant. While Gwen could perform precise Force techniques with careful concentration, He excelled at improvising and combining force abilities with his aliens on the fly. Speaking of adaptation, Tetra continued, have you practiced the technique we discussed? Maintaining force awareness during transformation. Been working on it. Ben activated the Omnitrix, cycling through his aliens. Still tricky with some forms. Ripjaws is the hardest, something about being underwater messes with how I sense the force. Forearms is the easiest, but the energy feels chunkier. If that makes sense. Each form changes how you interact with the force, Tetra explained. Just as different species throughout the galaxy experience it uniquely. Ben selected Swampfire from the dial. Let me show you what I figured out with this guy. The flash of green light enveloped him, replacing human DNA with methanosian. As Swampfire, Ben immediately reached out through the force, feeling the energy field shift to accommodate his altered state. Where his human form sensed the force as a smooth current, Swampfire perceived it more like soil nutrients, something to be drawn up through roots. Watch this, Swampfire said, extending both hands. Small flames appeared at his fingertips, normal for his methanosian biology. But then, instead of launching them, he closed his eyes and concentrated. The flames changed color, shifting from orange to a strange, shimmering blue-green. When he opened his eyes, he directed the modified flames toward a dead tree stump nearby. Upon contact, the stump didn't just burn, it regenerated, sprouting green shoots that grew visibly, unfurling new leaves within seconds. Impressive, Tetra said, genuine surprise in her voice. You're channeling the force through your natural flames, converting destructive energy to life-giving. Swampfire nodded. Figured it out by accident last week fighting Dr. Animo. He had these mutant plants attacking downtown, and I was trying to burn them back without torching the whole block. You continue to discover applications I would never have considered, Tetra admitted. The combination of your transformations with force sensitivity creates possibilities unseen in my galaxy. The Omnitrix symbol on Swampfire's chest beeped and flashed red. A moment later, Ben was human again. Still working on holding the connection through transformations, Ben said. Sometimes I lose it when changing forms. That will come with practice. Tetra checked the position of the sun. Go. Enjoy your evening with Julie. But remember your shielding exercises before sleep. Ben grinned, already reaching for his phone to text Julie. Will do. Force meditation, shield reinforcement, all that good stuff. As he jogged toward the path that would take him back to town, Tetra called after him, and Benjamin? Well done today. The simple praise made him smile all the way down the mountain. Julie's welcome home dinner at Mr. Smoothie was everything Ben had been looking forward to. They grabbed their usual booth by the window, sharing stories from the weeks apart, her tennis victories, his alien encounters, though he left out some of the more dangerous details. So this force training, Julie said, stirring her strawberry smoothie. It's going well. Ben nodded. Yeah, actually. It's weird, it's the first time I've had to really work at powers that aren't just from the Omnitrix. But it's cool, you know. This is actually me, not just an alien DNA sample. Julie smiled. I get that. It's like how tennis feels for me, something that's just mine, that I worked for. Exactly. Ben said, relieved she understood. Tetra says I'm picking it up faster than most Padawans, that's what they call Jedi students where she's from. I'm not surprised. You've always been good at adapting. Julie reached across the table, taking his hand. Just don't forget to take breaks sometimes. All work and no play makes Ben a dull hero. Ben squeezed her hand. That's what tonight's for. No aliens, no force training, no, his phone buzzed. Then Julie's phone buzzed. Then every phone in Mr. Smoothie buzzed simultaneously. Everyone checked their devices at once. An emergency alert filled the screens, unidentified energy surged downtown. Shelter in place until further notice. Ben and Julie locked eyes. Rain check, she asked, already knowing the answer. I'm sorry, Ben said, genuinely disappointed. I'll make it up to you, I promise. Julie nodded. Go. Save the day. I'll wait for your call. Ben dropped some cash on the table, gave Julie a quick kiss, and ran for the door. Once outside, he tapped his plumber badge. Gwen, Kevin, you seeing this alert? Kevin's voice came through first. Already on it. Gwen's tracking the energy signature. It's weird, not like anything in the plumber database. I'm heading downtown, Ben said. Meet you there. He activated the Omnitrix, selected XLR8, and transformed. The Kineceleron speed would get him downtown in seconds, and Ben had gotten pretty good at maintaining force awareness in this form. As he raced through the streets, wind rushing past, Ben extended his senses through the force. XLR8's perception of the force was unique, like trying to feel individual raindrops while running through a storm. Fast, fragmented, but intensely vivid in flashes. Something felt wrong. The energy downtown wasn't just unfamiliar, it felt predatory. Purposeful. XLR8 skidded to a halt at the edge of the downtown district. Smoke rose from a building 2 blocks away, the Bellwood Science Center. Emergency vehicles had formed a perimeter, but they weren't approaching. Gwen and Kevin pulled up in Kevin's car a minute later, just as the Omnitrix timed out. That was fast, Ben commented as he returned to human form. We were already on our way when the alert went out, Gwen explained. I felt something strange in the force. Like a void moving through the city. Ben nodded. I felt it too, when I was heading here. Like something hunting. Kevin absorbed the metal from a nearby fire hydrant, coating his body in protective armor. Whatever it is, it took out the Science Center security in under a minute. Plumber monitoring shows all systems went dark simultaneously. Ben approached a police officer manning the perimeter. What's the situation inside? The officer recognized him from previous incidents. Unknown intruder, possibly alien. Building was mostly empty for the evening except for a few researchers. We've lost contact with everyone inside. Any demands? Gwen asked. None. But our thermal scans show movement on the 3rd floor, near the experimental physics lab. Ben nodded. We'll handle it from here. As the trio moved toward the building, Ben activated the Omnitrix again. Going ghost freak. I can scout ahead invisibly. Be careful, Gwen warned. If this thing can sense the force like we can, invisibility might not hide you completely. Ben paused, considering. Good point. Big Chill might be better, still got phasing abilities, but less likely to be detected. He transformed, the massive moth-like alien's wings unfurling. I'll check it out. You two circle around to the emergency exit on the east side. I'll signal when I know what we're dealing with. Big Chill phased through the front wall of the Science Center, immediately extending his senses. The building was eerily quiet, emergency lights casting red shadows down empty corridors. Reaching through the force, Ben detected several life forms, most were huddled in fear, likely hiding researchers. But one presence moved with purpose, its force signature unlike anything Ben had encountered before. It wasn't dark like Melville's had become, nor light like Tetra's. It was contained. Controlled. Deliberately muted, like someone wearing sensory dampening equipment. Big Chill floated silently toward the 3rd floor, phasing through ceilings rather than using the stairs. As he approached the physics lab, he heard a voice speaking in a language the Omnitrix didn't automatically translate, unusual, given its capabilities. Peering through the wall, Big Chill saw the intruder. The figure stood over 2 feet taller than an average human, with broad shoulders and a narrow waist. It wore armor that seemed to shift colors subtly, adapting to its surroundings without becoming fully invisible. Its helmet featured no eye slits, just a smooth, reflective surface with intricate patterns etched into the metal. Multiple weapons hung from a utility belt, along with devices Ben didn't recognize. The alien was methodically dismantling equipment from the lab, selecting specific components and placing them in a specialized case. It moved with practiced efficiency, ignoring the more valuable technology in favor of seemingly random parts. Big Chill phased back through the wall, tapping his Omnitrix symbol to activate the communicator. Found our intruder. Definitely alien, heavily armed, taking specific equipment from the physics lab. Doesn't seem interested in hostages, but I'm sensing researchers hiding throughout the building. Can you get the civilians out? Gwen asked. I'll try. Meet me on the 3rd floor, east stairwell. And be careful, this guy feels professional. Big Chill phased through the building, locating the frightened researchers and guiding them toward exits. Most were too shocked to ask questions, simply following his whispered instructions to evacuate quietly. As he directed the last group toward safety, Big Chill felt a shift in the force, a sudden awareness, like a searchlight sweeping across him. The alien had sensed him. Abandoning stealth, Big Chill phased back toward the physics lab, arriving just as Gwen and Kevin reached the 3rd floor. Covers blown, he warned. He knows we're here. The door to the physics lab exploded outward, hurled by some unseen force. The armored figure stepped through the smoke, hands empty but clearly ready for conflict. Ben Tennyson, the alien said, its voice modulated through its helmet. The wielder of the Omnitrix. Your presence is unexpected. Yeah, well, breaking into research facilities tends to get my attention, Big Chill responded. Want to tell us what you're after before we have to get rough? The alien tilted its head slightly. You've changed since the records. New energy signature. Interesting. It reached for a device on its belt, not a weapon, but some kind of scanner. Confirmed. Force sensitivity. High concentration. Primary target identified. Ben felt a chill that had nothing to do with his alien form. Primary target? What's that supposed to mean? Instead of answering, the alien moved with shocking speed, tossing small spherical devices toward each of them. Ben instinctively phased, expecting explosives, but instead, the spheres released a strange energy field. As the field passed through Big Chill's phased form, Ben felt his connection to the force suddenly muted, like someone had stuffed cotton in his ears. His phasing ability faltered, leaving him partially solid and vulnerable. Gwen's mana shields flickered and died as the field touched her. Kevin, less affected but still caught off guard, charged forward only to be met with a precise strike that exploited a gap in his armor. Force suppression technology, the alien explained calmly, as if conducting a lecture. Temporary but effective. Your abilities will return shortly, but you won't be here to use them. The alien raised its arm, revealing a built-in weapon that hummed with energy. Before it could fire, Ben fought through the disorientation, focusing on the Omnitrix symbol. Forcing a transformation, he shifted from Big Chill to Humongosaur in a flash of green light. The massive dinosaur-like alien roared, shaking off some of the suppression effects through sheer size and power. Nice try, Humongosaur growled, but I've got more than one trick. He charged forward, the floor shaking with each massive step. The armored alien sidestepped with remarkable agility, letting Humongosaur crash into the lab equipment behind him. Vaxasaurian transformation. Impressive strength, limited agility, the alien noted clinically. It tapped something on its gauntlet, and its armor shifted, panels realigning. Adjusting countermeasures. Who are you? Gwen demanded, struggling to reform her mana constructs as the suppression field slowly dissipated. I am the Seeker, the alien replied simply. I locate and acquire specimens with valuable genetic traits for my clients. Today's specimen was meant to be Dr. Emil Hamilton, the only human on this planet with a specific genetic marker my client desires. The Seeker gestured toward an unconscious man strapped to what looked like an anti-gravity stretcher near the window. But now I find 3 individuals with force sensitivity, a much rarer commodity. My client will be pleased. Humongousaur moved to position himself between the Seeker and his friends. "You're not taking anyone." Bold statement from someone who doesn't understand what he's facing. The Seeker's helmet reconfigured, panels sliding to reveal multiple targeting systems. "I've captured Jedi before. You are not even close to their level of training." Multiple projectiles launched from the Seeker's armor, each splitting into a net of energy that expanded in flight. Humongousaur batted away two with his massive arms, but a third wrapped around him, constricting and sending painful energy pulses through his body. Kevin, recovering from the initial attack, absorbed the metal from a nearby lab table and shaped his hand into a blade. He slashed at the Seeker from behind, only for the alien to dodge without even looking, as if he'd anticipated the attack. "Primitive," the Seeker commented, firing a pulse that sent Kevin flying back into a wall. Force sensitivity isn't just about moving objects. It's about perception. Anticipation. Something your limited training hasn't covered yet. Gwen, having finally broken through the suppression field, launched a barrage of mana discs. The Seeker moved between them with uncanny precision, each step calculated to the millimeter. "Your technique is interesting," the Seeker noted as he closed the distance to Gwen. "Hybrid of force and anodite energy. My client would find you particularly valuable." Before he could reach her, Humongousaur broke free of the energy net with a roar of effort. Growing to his full 30-foot height, he smashed through equipment to reach Gwen's side. "We need to get that scientist and get out of here," he said. "This guy's too prepared for a direct fight." Gwen nodded, creating a mana platform beneath the unconscious scientist and pulling him toward them. The Seeker observed this calmly. Tactical retreat. Wise. But unnecessary. He pressed another control on his gauntlet, and the walls of the lab suddenly glowed with embedded technology that had been invisible moments before. "This facility was prepared before I arrived." Energy fields sprang up around the exits. Humongousaur charged one, only to be repelled with a painful shock that reverted him to human form. Ben gasped, feeling the Omnitrix recharging. He set a trap. This whole thing was staged. Partially, the Seeker acknowledged. "Dr. Hamilton was my original target. Your arrival is a fortunate coincidence." He approached Ben with measured steps. "But now I face a dilemma. 3 specimens, 1 containment unit. Priorities must be established." In a move too quick to counter, the Seeker fired a dart that struck Ben in the shoulder. As he pulled it out, Ben felt a wave of dizziness sweep over him. "Specialized tranquilizer," the Seeker explained. "Calibrated for your human form. It won't kill you, but you won't be transforming again for several hours." Ben fought against the encroaching darkness, reaching for the force to clear his system. He'd practiced toxin purging with Tetra, but the tranquilizer worked too quickly, clouding his concentration. Through blurring vision, he saw Gwen and Kevin continuing the fight. Gwen had created a mana bubble around herself and the scientist, while Kevin, now covered in a more durable alloy, engaged the Seeker directly. "Get Ben out." Kevin grunted between blows, surprisingly holding his own against the Seeker's superior technology. Ben felt Gwen's mana envelop him, pulling him toward the bubble. As darkness claimed his consciousness, the last thing he saw was the Seeker producing some kind of device that caused Kevin's armor to suddenly destabilize, leaving him vulnerable. Ben woke to the steady beeping of medical equipment. His head pounded, and his mouth felt like it was stuffed with cotton. Blinking against the harsh light, he recognized the ceiling of the plumber base medical bay. "He's awake," Grandpa Max's voice came from nearby. Ben tried to sit up, only to be gently pushed back down by his grandfather's hand. "Easy there, sport. That tranquilizer packed quite a punch." "Gwen. Kevin?" Ben asked, his voice raspy. Max's expression tightened. "Kevin's here too. 3 broken ribs and a concussion, but he'll recover." The omission was glaring. "And Gwen?" Ben demanded, forcing himself upright despite the room spinning. The Seeker took her, Max admitted grimly. Along with Dr. Hamilton. Kevin managed to plant a tracker on the Seeker's ship before it left, but we lost the signal once it reached orbit. Ben swung his legs over the side of the bed, ignoring the wave of nausea that followed. How long was I out? About 4 hours. The Omnitrix has been cycling through recharge, but it seems to be working normally now. We need to find them. Ben looked around for his jacket. Where's Tetra? She might know something about this Seeker guy. Already here, came Tetra's voice as she entered the medical bay. The former Jedi looked troubled, her usual calm demeanor strained. I've reviewed the security footage. I know who we're dealing with. She activated a holographic display, showing footage of the Seeker in action at the Science Center. His kind are called Adiran, bounty hunters specializing in specimen acquisition for wealthy clients throughout multiple galaxies. They're among the few species naturally resistant to Force influences, making them particularly effective against Jedi. He said he's captured Jedi before, Ben recalled, standing shakily. Tetra nodded grimly. During the Clone Wars, some Adiran worked with Separatists to capture Jedi for study. Later, when the Empire rose, they found even more lucrative employment hunting Force sensitives for the Inquisitorius. But what would one be doing here, on Earth? Max asked. Earth has been considered a Force null zone for centuries, few naturally sensitive individuals, isolated from galactic society. The perfect hiding place for those fleeing persecution. Tetra's expression darkened. But something has changed. The Force is stirring here, becoming more active. Ben realized. When I activated the holocron and started training, could that have drawn attention? Perhaps, Tetra acknowledged. But more likely, the Seeker was already here tracking Dr. Hamilton for unrelated reasons. Your encounter simply provided a more valuable prize. Kevin limped into the room, one arm in a sling. I grabbed something from him, he said, holding out his good hand to reveal a small metal component. Tore it off his armor during the fight. Tetra examined the piece. Part of a long-range communicator. Adiran technology. She looked at Kevin with new respect. How did you manage to remove it? Their armor is virtually impenetrable. Kevin shrugged, then winced at the movement. I don't know. When I absorbed the metal from that last lab table, something felt different. Like I could feel the weak points in his armor somehow. Tetra's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Interesting. The alloy must have had properties that conducted Force energy. Kevin, you may have inadvertently channeled the Force through the metal. I can do that? Kevin asked, surprised. I thought I wasn't Force sensitive like Ben and Gwen. Everyone has some connection to the Force, Tetra explained. Yours manifests differently, through your absorption abilities rather than direct manipulation. Great, we can discuss Kevin's newfound talents after we rescue Gwen, Ben interrupted. How do we track the Seeker's ship? Max pulled up a star map on the medical bay's display. Based on the last trajectory before we lost the tracker, he's heading toward the Messier 33 galaxy. There's an old trading post on the outer rim that's known for black market exchanges. Then that's where we're going, Ben said, checking the Omnitrix. Plumber ship or Rust Bucket 3? Neither, Tetra interjected. The Seeker will be expecting pursuit. We need something he won't recognize. She hesitated, then continued reluctantly, I have a ship. All three men turned to stare at her. You have a spaceship? Ben asked. All this time? Tetra nodded. I arrived on Earth in it decades ago. I've kept it hidden and maintained, in case I ever needed to leave quickly. What kind of ship? Kevin asked, professional interest piqued. A modified Jedi interceptor. It's small but fast, and equipped with stealth technology that predates most modern scanning systems. Great, when do we leave? Ben asked, already moving toward the door. It's not that simple, Tetra cautioned. The ship only seats 2. And pursuing the Seeker means potentially revealing myself to forces that have been hunting Jedi for decades. You don't have to come, Ben said, understanding her hesitation. Just lend us the ship. Kevin and I can. No, Tetra interrupted firmly. The Seeker is beyond your current abilities, especially in his own environment. I will pilot the ship. You will accompany me, Ben. Hold on, Kevin protested. Gwen's my girlfriend. I should be going. Tetra faced him directly. Your injuries would compromise the mission. And Ben's combination of force abilities and the Omnitrix gives us the best chance of success. Her voice softened slightly. I understand your concern for Gwen. But your role will be equally important. She turned to Max. We need someone here continuing to track the Seeker's movements and preparing countermeasures for his technology. The component Kevin recovered could be reverse engineered to create a defense against his force suppression devices. Max nodded slowly. She's right, Kevin. And if the Seeker has allies, we need to be ready for them here too. Kevin looked like he wanted to argue further but finally relented. Fine. But you bring her back safe, you hear me? Ben clapped a hand on his friend's shoulder. Count on it. Tetra's hidden ship turned out to be concealed in an abandoned mining cavern in the mountains outside Bellwood. As they hiked the last stretch to the entrance, Ben marveled at how thoroughly she had integrated into Earth while maintaining her secret. I have to ask, he said, clambering over a fallen tree, why stay on Earth all these years? You could have gone anywhere. Tetra continued walking, her movements effortless despite the rough terrain. After the fall of the Jedi Order, I wandered for years, always one step ahead of Imperial hunters. Earth was supposed to be a temporary refuge, a place to heal and plan my next move. She paused at a seemingly ordinary rock face, pressing her palm against a specific point. A seam appeared in the stone, widening into a doorway. But time passed. The Empire's reach seemed endless. Eventually, I stopped running and started building a life here. They entered a narrow tunnel that sloped downward, illuminated by soft blue lights that activated at their approach. And the Force? Ben asked. Did you keep training? In private, yes. The Jedi teachings were too ingrained to abandon entirely. But I avoided using abilities that might be detected. They emerged into a large cavern, and Ben stopped in his tracks. Until you awakened the holocron. In the center of the cavern sat Tetra's ship, sleek, elegant, with swept-back wings and a cockpit designed for maximum visibility. Its hull was a deep midnight blue with subtle silver detailing that caught the light. Despite being decades old by her account, it looked more advanced than any Earth technology. Whoa, Ben breathed. That's your ride? Tetra approached the ship, running her hand along its hull with a mixture of fondness and sadness. A Jedi starfighter, Delta 7 class, modified for long-range travel. One of the last to leave the temple before Order 66. The ship hummed to life at her touch, ramp extending smoothly. I've maintained it over the years, incorporating compatible Earth technology where possible. Ben followed her up the ramp, examining every detail with fascination. The interior was compact but efficiently designed. The main cockpit featured 2 seats, pilot and gunner, with controls that blended mechanical interfaces with holographic displays. This is amazing, Ben said, sliding into the gunner's seat. But will it still fly? I mean, after sitting here for decades. I exercise the engines monthly, Tetra said, taking the pilot's position. And the onboard systems run diagnostics automatically. Her hands moved over the controls with practiced familiarity. Prepare for departure. The cavern ceiling retracted, revealing a camouflaged exit to the sky above. The ship rose smoothly on repulsor lifts, then shot upward so quickly that Ben was pressed back into his seat. Activating stealth systems, Tetra announced as they breached Earth's atmosphere. And calculating hyperspace coordinates based on the Seeker's last known trajectory. Ben watched Earth shrink beneath them, the curve of the planet becoming visible against the blackness of space. Despite his worry for Gwen, he couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. He'd been in space before, but never in a ship like this, never with a former Jedi Knight at the controls. So what's the plan when we find them? Ben asked as Tetra programmed the NAV computer. The Seeker will take Gwen and Dr. Hamilton to a secure facility for processing before delivery to his client, Tetra explained. These operations typically follow standard procedures: medical evaluation, containment testing, and preliminary examination. That sounds clinical, Ben noted with concern. It is. The Seeker doesn't view his targets as people, merely specimens with valuable traits. Tetra's voice hardened. But this process takes time, typically 48 to 72 hours. That gives us an opportunity to intercept before final transport. The stars stretched into lines as they accelerated to light speed, the ship humming smoothly around them. You should rest, Tetra suggested. Even at maximum speed, we're looking at 8 hours to reach the trading post. I'll wake you when we arrive. Ben wanted to protest that he couldn't possibly sleep while Gwen was in danger, but exhaustion from the day's events and the lingering effects of the tranquilizer were catching up with him. Wake me in 4 hours. We should go over rescue strategies. Tetra nodded. 4 hours. And Ben, prepare yourself. Where we're going, the Omnitrix will attract as much attention as Force abilities. Keep both concealed until absolutely necessary. Ben woke to Tetra's hand on his shoulder. The cockpit was dimmed except for the glow of instrumentation and the streaking stars of hyperspace. We're approaching the Carrex trading station, she informed him. I need to brief you before we arrive. Ben rubbed his eyes, checking the Omnitrix out of habit. I'm listening. Tetra brought up a holographic display of their destination, a sprawling space station built into the side of an asteroid. Carrex began as a legitimate trading post centuries ago, but has since become a haven for those operating outside galactic law. Think of it as a port city where no questions are asked and everything has a price. Sounds charming, Ben commented. And you think the Seeker took Gwen there? It's the most logical stopover point in this sector for someone with his needs, Tetra confirmed. The station has secure docking, medical facilities, and brokers who specialize in connecting bounty hunters with their clients. She manipulated the hologram, highlighting specific sections of the station. We'll dock here, in the visitors' quadrant. I've transmitted credentials identifying us as private traders from the Outer Rim. Won't the Seeker detect your ship? Ben asked. You said it's a Jedi design. The external configuration has been modified substantially. To casual observation, it appears to be a standard long-range courier. Tetra's expression grew more serious. Now, for our cover story. You'll be my apprentice, a young pilot in training. Keep the Omnitrix covered at all times. She reached into a compartment and retrieved a bundle of clothing. These will help you blend in. The style is common enough not to attract attention. Ben examined the clothes. A dark tunic, fitted pants, and a long coat with multiple hidden pockets. What about you? Won't your Jedi outfit stand out? I haven't worn traditional Jedi robes in decades, Tetra noted dryly, gesturing to her current Earth-style clothing. I have suitable attire of my own. As Ben changed into the space clothes, Tetra continued the briefing. The station operates on standard galactic basic for most transactions, which your Omnitrix should translate. Credits are the primary currency, which I have sufficient of. And most importantly, trust no one. Everyone on Carrex has an agenda. So we find the Seeker's ship, locate Gwen and the scientist, and get out, Ben summarized. Sounds simple enough. Which means it almost certainly won't be, Tetra countered. The Seeker is a professional with decades of experience. He'll have safeguards and contingencies. The ship dropped out of hyperspace with a subtle shift, the streaking stars resolving into pinpoints of light. In the distance, the CarX trading station loomed against the backdrop of a nebula, its irregular shape bristling with docking arms and communication arrays. CarX Control, this is Independent Transport Horizon Dawn requesting docking clearance, Tetra transmitted as they approached. 2 passengers, trading mission. After a brief exchange and transmission of their false credentials, they were directed to a docking port in the station's commercial sector. Remember, Tetra said as they prepared to disembark, you are Kai Merrick, my apprentice. No mention of Earth, plumbers, or the Omnitrix. And use the Force only if absolutely necessary, there may be others who can sense such abilities. Ben nodded, adjusting the sleeve of his coat to better conceal the Omnitrix. Got it. Low profile. The moment they stepped from the ship onto the station, Ben was assaulted by sensory overload. The air carried strange scents, alien spices, mechanical lubricants, and unidentifiable biologicals. The background hum of the station's systems was punctuated by dozens of languages being spoken simultaneously. And through the Force, Ben sensed a churning mass of life energy, hundreds of species, each with their own unique signature. Breathe, Tetra instructed quietly. Center yourself. Filter what you don't need. Ben followed her guidance, focusing his awareness more narrowly. The chaotic impressions receded to manageable levels. They made their way through the docking area into the main concourse, a wide thoroughfare lined with shops, trading stalls, and information terminals. Beings of all descriptions moved purposefully through the space, conducting business with minimal interaction. How do we find the Seeker? Ben whispered as they walked. We don't, not directly, Tetra replied. We locate secure docking facilities capable of handling a ship of his class, then narrow our search based on recent arrivals. She led them to a public terminal, interfacing with it briefly. 3 facilities match our criteria. The closest is in the medical sector, which aligns with his likely activities. As they made their way toward the medical sector, Ben noticed they were drawing occasional glances from passers-by. Are we that obvious? He asked under his breath. Not obviously Earth-human, Tetra explained, but unfamiliar. CarX regulars can spot newcomers easily. They passed through several security checkpoints, Tetra handling the interactions with casual confidence that prevented closer scrutiny. The medical sector was more orderly than the commercial areas, with uniformed personnel moving efficiently between facilities. Tetra paused at a junction, extending her senses. This way, she said after a moment, turning down a less traveled corridor. Ben followed, his own Force awareness prickling with unease. You sense her? Not precisely, Tetra admitted. But there's a concentration of security measures ahead that suggests something valuable is being protected. They approached what appeared to be a private medical facility, its entrance guarded by automated systems rather than personnel. Tetra studied the security setup with a critical eye. Standard containment protocols, she noted. Designed to keep something in, not just people out. Ben examined the door controls. Can you override it? Not without alerting security, Tetra replied. We need a distraction. Before they could formulate a plan, a commotion erupted from a nearby corridor, shouts, the sound of equipment crashing, and the distinctive hum of energy weapons. That's our distraction, Ben said, already moving toward the door as the automated systems diverted attention to the disturbance. Tetra placed her hand over the access panel, closing her eyes briefly. The panel sparked, and the door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Inside, the facility resembled a high-tech laboratory merged with a medical center. Examination tables with restraint systems lined one wall, while diagnostic equipment and containment units filled the remaining space. Gwen. Ben called softly, scanning the room. A muffled sound drew their attention to a containment field at the far end of the lab. Inside, suspended in a blue energy field, floated Gwen, conscious but clearly drugged, her movements sluggish and unfocused. Hold on, we're getting you out, Ben assured her, examining the control panel for the containment system. Careful, Tetra warned. These systems often have an alarm blared as Ben touched the controls, red lights flashing throughout the facility. Security protocols, Tetra finished with a sigh. Sorry, Ben winced. Plan B. Plan B, Tetra confirmed, drawing a compact device from within her jacket. To Ben's astonishment, the device extended into a familiar form, the hilt of a lightsaber. With a snap hiss, a blade of pure energy ignited, its color a vibrant blue that illuminated the room. You still have your lightsaber? Ben exclaimed. You never mentioned that during training. There wasn't a need, Tetra replied, slicing through the containment field's power conduits with precise movements. On Earth, it remained safely hidden. The energy field flickered and died, Gwen dropping gently to the floor as Tetra caught her with the force. Ben. Gwen murmured, struggling to focus. How did you? Explanations later, Ben said, supporting her weight. Can you walk? Gwen nodded weakly. They drugged me, suppressing my powers, but I'm okay. Where's Dr. Hamilton? Tetra asked, scanning the facility. Already gone, Gwen managed. They transferred him, different buyer. The door to the facility slid open, revealing a security team led by a towering reptilian being. Unauthorized access detected. Surrender immediately. Ben reached for the Omnitrix, but Tetra's hand on his arm stopped him. Not yet, she whispered. Follow my lead. Stepping forward, Tetra addressed the security team in a commanding voice. There has been a misunderstanding. This specimen was acquired illegally from a protected sector. The reptilian security chief hesitated, clearly not expecting this approach. We have no record of disputed ownership. The seeker's credentials are in order. The seeker failed to file proper acquisition documentation with the Galactic Registry, Tetra continued smoothly. I represent interested parties who have prior claim. The security team exchanged uncertain glances. Ben realized Tetra was subtly influencing them through the Force, not controlling their minds, but nudging their perception toward doubt. This will need verification, the chief finally said. All parties must submit documentation to. The far wall exploded inward, showering the room with debris. Through the newly created opening stepped the seeker, weapons already drawn. Jedi deception, he stated flatly, his helmet sensors focusing on Tetra's lightsaber. Your kind always interfere with legitimate business. The security team scattered, clearly unwilling to be caught between a Jedi and an Adiran bounty hunter. Your business includes kidnapping, Ben shot back. That makes it our business. The seeker's helmet turned toward him. The boy with the Omnitrix. Two valuable specimens attempting to recover a third. This exceeds efficiency projections. We're not specimens, Ben said, activating the Omnitrix. We're here to take Gwen home. He slammed down on the dial, transforming into Diamond Head. The crystalline alien's tough exterior would provide protection against the Seeker's weapons, while his projectile abilities offered ranged attack options. The Seeker adjusted settings on his armor, clearly adapting to the new threat. Petrosapien form. Crystalline structure, projectile capabilities. Weaknesses, sonic vibrations, extreme temperatures. On cue, his gauntlets emitted a high-pitched whine that sent painful vibrations through Diamond Head's body, causing cracks to form across his surface. He's done his homework, Diamond Head grunted, firing crystal shards that the Seeker easily dodged. Tetra moved with blinding speed, her lightsaber a blur of motion as she closed the distance to the Seeker. The bounty hunter met her attack with forearm shields that somehow resisted the lightsaber's blade. Cortosis weave, the Seeker explained, noting her surprise. Standard equipment for Jedi encounters. Gwen, still fighting the effects of the drugs, managed to create small mana constructs, not her usual powerful shields, but enough to distract the Seeker at critical moments. Diamond Head, recovering from the sonic attack, remembered Kevin's discovery about channeling the Force through materials. Concentrating, he reached for the Force while touching the crystal floor beneath him. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The entire crystalline surface of the room responded to his command, spikes erupting beneath the Seeker's feet, forcing him to constantly adjust his position. "That's new," the Seeker commented, still maintaining his clinical detachment despite the escalating battle. "I'm full of surprises," Diamondhead replied, directing another wave of crystal growth that surrounded the Seeker's legs, temporarily immobilizing him. Taking advantage of the opening, Tetra slashed through the bounty hunter's shoulder-mounted weapon system, disabling his ranged capabilities. The Seeker responded by activating some kind of pulse generator that sent all three of his opponents staggering back. Engagement parameters exceeded. Tactical withdrawal indicated. Before they could recover, the Seeker tapped a sequence on his gauntlet. A section of the ceiling collapsed, and a tow cable dropped through the opening. The Seeker attached it to his armor and began rising toward what was presumably his ship docked above. "He's getting away," Gwen called, finally shaking off enough of the drug's effects to stand unassisted. Diamondhead formed his arm into a sharp blade, preparing to cut the cable, when the Seeker's final words gave him pause. "Your force abilities have drawn attention beyond mine," the bounty hunter called down. The specimen was merely the first ripple. "The storm follows." With that cryptic warning, he disappeared through the ceiling breach. Moments later, they heard the unmistakable sound of a ship disengaging from the station. The Omnitrix timed out, returning Ben to human form. "What did he mean by that?" he asked Tetra. The former Jedi deactivated her lightsaber, her expression troubled. "He's warning us that others have detected the Force awakening on Earth. More dangerous hunters may already be on their way." Alarms continued to blare throughout the facility. Questions later, Gwen urged. "We need to get out of here before station security locks down the entire sector." Their escape from Karek Station proved more complicated than their infiltration. With security alerts broadcasting their descriptions, they were forced to take a circuitous route back to Tetra's ship, avoiding main corridors and security checkpoints. Gwen, though still weakened, provided valuable assistance by creating small distractions with her gradually returning mana abilities. Ben resisted the urge to transform again, knowing it would only make them more conspicuous. By the time they reached the docking bay, station security was conducting systematic searches of all ships preparing for departure. "They've got the bay locked down," Ben observed from their position in a maintenance corridor overlooking the area. "How are we getting to the ship?" Tetra studied the security pattern for a moment. "They're checking credentials and scanning for weapons. Standard procedure." "So what's the plan?" Gwen asked. "I'm not at full strength yet, and Ben can't transform without giving us away." "We don't need abilities for this," Tetra said with a hint of a smile. "Sometimes the old ways are best." She led them to a supply cart being prepared for delivery to the docked ships. With a subtle gesture and what Ben recognized as a mild force suggestion, she convinced the worker that they were maintenance personnel assigned to service ships in their section. Hidden among replacement parts and supply containers, they were wheeled directly to their docking bay. Once the cart was left unattended, they slipped aboard Tetra's ship, securing the hatch behind them. "Pre-flight checks complete," Tetra announced once they reached the cockpit. "Departure clearance is our only remaining obstacle." "They're not just going to let us fly away," Ben pointed out. "Not without persuasion," Tetra agreed, opening a communication channel to station control. When the controller appeared on screen, she spoke with quiet authority. "Horizon Dawn requesting immediate departure clearance. Routine maintenance complete." Ben felt a subtle ripple in the force as Tetra exerted her influence. The controller's expression softened slightly. "Horizon Dawn, transmit departure credentials for verification." Tetra sent the data, continuing her gentle persuasion. "You'll find everything in order. Our schedule requires prompt departure." After a tense moment, the controller nodded. "Credentials verified. Proceed to departure vector 22B, safe travels, Horizon Dawn." "Thank you, Control." Horizon Dawn out. Tetra closed the channel, already bringing the engines online. "Strap in. Our departure may need to be expedited if they realize their error. The ship detached smoothly from the docking arm, maneuvering away from the station with practiced precision. They had nearly reached the minimum safe distance for hyperspace jump when alarms blared in the cockpit. Station security has ordered us to return, Tetra reported calmly. They've activated tractor beam systems. Ben checked the sensor display. 2 patrol ships launching. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they're in range. Activating countermeasures, Tetra responded, her hands flying over the controls. The ship's engines surged, pushing them beyond the tractor beam's effective range. Plot a hyperspace jump to these coordinates. Gwen, occupying the navigation station, entered the data Tetra provided. Coordinates locked. But this doesn't lead back to Earth. A precaution, Tetra explained. We'll make several jumps to ensure we're not followed before returning home. The patrol ships fired warning shots across their bow, energy weapons illuminating space around them. Jump now, Tetra ordered. Gwen activated the hyperdrive, and the stars stretched into lines as they accelerated beyond light speed, leaving Carrex Station and its pursuing ships far behind. Several hours and multiple hyperspace jumps later, they gathered in the ship's small common area. Gwen, having fully recovered from the drugs, was examining data she'd managed to download during their escape. The Seeker's client list is encrypted, she reported, but I extracted some information about his operation. He's been active for decades, specializing in rare genetic traits and abilities. Any mention of who specifically wanted Force-sensitive specimens? Ben asked. Gwen shook her head. Nothing specific, but there are references to a primary client who's been particularly interested in Force users over the past year. Tetra, who had been silent since their final jump, looked troubled. The timing coincides with disturbances I've felt in the Force. Something is shifting in the balance, something dark and ancient stirring after long dormancy. Could it be related to the Sith holocron Melville found? Ben suggested. Perhaps, Tetra acknowledged. Holocrons don't merely contain information, they can resonate across vast distances, calling to those attuned to their energies. So finding one holocron could lead to others, Gwen realized. Or to whoever created them in the first place. This is getting bigger than just us, isn't it? Ben said, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. Tetra nodded grimly. The Force awakening on Earth was bound to draw attention eventually. The Seeker is merely the first wave. We must prepare for what follows. And what exactly is that? Gwen asked. I can't be certain, Tetra admitted. But based on the Seeker's warning and what I sense in the Force, someone powerful in the dark side has taken notice of Earth. Someone who may have been watching for a very long time. Ben checked the Omnitrix, a habit that had become instinctive when faced with new threats. Well, whatever's coming, we'll be ready. Between the Omnitrix, Gwen's magic, Kevin's abilities, and your Jedi training, we've got a pretty good team. Tetra offered a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Your confidence is admirable, Ben. But if my suspicions are correct, we're facing an enemy unlike any you've encountered before. Not a conquering army or a simple power-hungry villain, but something that has survived centuries by manipulating events from the shadows. The ship's navigation system chimed, indicating their approach to the final jump point that would return them to Earth. We should prepare for the jump, Tetra said, rising from her seat. And when we return, training must intensify. For all of us. Earth appeared on the view screen, the blue-green planet a welcome sight after their interstellar ordeal. As they descended toward Bellwood, Ben couldn't help but see his home with new eyes, not just as the town he'd grown up in, but as a potential battleground in a conflict spanning galaxies. They landed at the Plumber base rather than returning to Tetra's hidden cavern, the ship's stealth systems ensuring their arrival went unnoticed by Earth's monitoring systems. Grandpa Max and Kevin were waiting in the hangar, relief evident on their faces as the trio disembarked. Gwen. Kevin rushed forward, embracing her carefully despite his own injuries. You okay? I'm fine, she assured him. Nothing a good night's sleep won't fix. Max hugged both his grandchildren before turning to Tetra. Mission successful, then. Gwen is safely returned, Tetra confirmed. But the implications of what we discovered are concerning. They moved to the briefing room, where Gwen transferred the data she'd collected to the plumber systems for analysis. As the information displayed on the main screen, Kevin let out a low whistle. The Seeker's been busy, he noted, scrolling through the list of acquisitions. Dozens of species, hundreds of specimens over the years. And a significant increase in force-sensitive targets recently, Max pointed out, highlighting a section of the data. All delivered to the same unnamed client. That matches what the Seeker told us before he escaped, Ben added. He said something about a storm coming, that others had noticed the force awakening on Earth. Max's expression grew serious. We've detected unusual energy signatures in several locations worldwide over the past week. Nothing we could definitively identify, but they don't match any known alien technology in our database. Probes, Tetra suggested. Someone mapping Earth's force patterns, looking for concentrations of energy. Like Bellwood, Gwen realized. With the three of us training here, we must light up like a beacon to anyone sensitive to the force. So what's our next move? Kevin asked. We can't exactly stop using our abilities. No, Tetra agreed. But we can be more strategic. Train in different locations, vary our patterns, create false signatures to confuse any watching presence. And accelerate your training, she added, looking at Ben, Gwen, and Kevin in turn. Each of you has unique gifts that, when properly developed, create a formidable defense. I've been working on that force channeling thing through different materials, Kevin mentioned, holding up a small metal sphere. Check this out. He absorbed the metal, covering his hand in the alloy. But instead of simply armoring himself as usual, the metal formed intricate patterns along his skin, glowing faintly with energy. I can feel the structure of the metal now, he explained. Not just copy it, but understand it. Reshape it based on what I need. Impressive, Tetra acknowledged. The force works through you differently, but no less powerfully. Ben activated the Omnitrix, cycling through his aliens thoughtfully. I've been practicing maintaining force awareness across transformations, like you suggested. Some forms are getting easier. Good, Tetra said. Because I suspect we'll need every advantage in the coming days. Max pulled up a global map, highlighting the locations of the unusual energy signatures. Whatever's happening, it's not limited to Bellwood anymore. We're seeing activity on every continent. We should investigate these sites, Gwen suggested. If someone's scanning Earth, they might have left evidence we can use to identify them. Agreed, Max said. I'll coordinate with plumber bases worldwide to secure these locations. In the meantime, I suggest you all get some rest. You've earned it. As the meeting broke up, Ben lingered behind, studying the map of energy signatures. Tetra joined him, her presence calm despite the tension in the room. Something's bothering you, she observed. Ben nodded. All my life, I've been fighting aliens who want the Omnitrix. Now suddenly I've got this whole other power that's attracting a whole new set of bad guys. It's like wearing two targets instead of one. The force is not a burden, Benjamin, Tetra said gently. It's a part of you, always has been, merely dormant until now. And remember, you're not alone in this fight. I know, Ben said, managing a small smile. It's just a lot to process. 3 months ago, my biggest problem was balancing hero work with trying to have a normal life. Now I'm training to be a Jedi and dealing with interstellar bounty hunters. The path of a Jedi is never easy, Tetra acknowledged. But I've rarely seen someone adapt as quickly as you have. Your resilience is remarkable. I had a good teacher, Ben replied. Speaking of which, that lightsaber move you pulled on the station. Pretty awesome. Any chance I could learn that? Tetra's expression grew thoughtful. Lightsaber construction is a sacred tradition, requiring specialized components and deep connection to the Force. But she hesitated, then continued, perhaps it's time to revive certain traditions. Not immediately, but when you're ready. Ben's eyes widened. Seriously? I could build a lightsaber. In time, Tetra cautioned. First, you must master the fundamentals. A lightsaber is not merely a weapon but an extension of oneself through the Force. Right, fundamentals first, Ben agreed, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. But eventually, lightsaber. Tetra shook her head, a rare smile playing at her lips. Your enthusiasm is both your strength and your challenge, Benjamin. Now go rest. Tomorrow, we intensify your training. The next morning found Ben in the forest clearing where they typically trained, but this time he wasn't alone. Kevin and Gwen had joined the session, each working on their unique manifestations of Force ability. Tetra moved between them, adjusting techniques and offering guidance tailored to their individual strengths. Kevin, focus on the molecular structure, not just the surface, she instructed as he practiced absorbing and reshaping a piece of specialized alloy. The Force flows through matter at its most fundamental level. Kevin nodded, concentrating more deeply. The metal on his arm shifted, forming more complex patterns that glowed with internal energy. Gwen, your mana constructs grow stronger when you draw simultaneously from both sources, Tetra continued, turning to where Gwen was creating energy shields. Let them complement each other rather than competing. Gwen adjusted her stance, her typical pink mana energy now threaded with subtle blue Force energy, creating stronger, more resilient barriers. Finally, Tetra approached Ben, who was practicing maintaining Force awareness while rapidly cycling through alien transformations. Good, she noted as he shifted from Swampfire to Echo without losing his connection to the Force. But remember, each form has its own relationship with the energy field. Don't force your human perception onto your transformations. Ben reverted to human form, breathing hard from the exertion. It's getting easier with some of them. Swampfire, 4 arms, Diamond Head, they all feel natural now. But the non-humanoid forms are still tricky. Try Brainstorm next, Tetra suggested. His cognitive abilities may offer interesting interactions with Force perception. Before Ben could activate the Omnitrix again, their session was interrupted by the arrival of Grandpa Max in a plumber vehicle. Something's happening, he called as he approached the group. Multiple energy signatures just appeared simultaneously at sites around the world, including one just outside Bellwood. The same type of energy as before? Gwen asked, dispelling her constructs. Max shook his head. Much stronger, and they're not fading. Whatever these things are, they're not just scanning anymore, they're establishing a presence. Where's the nearest one? Ben asked, already reaching for the Omnitrix. Mount Craven, about 15 miles from here, Max replied. Satellite imaging shows what appears to be some kind of structure that wasn't there yesterday. Then let's check it out, Kevin said, absorbing the metal from Max's vehicle to armor himself. Tetra's expression was deeply troubled. This pattern, it's familiar. An ancient Sith technique for establishing nexus points, locations where the barrier between normal space and Force energy is deliberately thinned. Meaning what, exactly? Ben asked. Meaning someone is preparing Earth for a major operation, Tetra said grimly. Creating access points that can be used to channel enormous amounts of Force energy. Like invasion staging areas? Max suggested. Possibly, Tetra acknowledged. Or something worse. The Sith had rituals that could affect entire planets if properly prepared. Well, they picked the wrong planet to mess with, Ben declared, activating the Omnitrix. Time to introduce ourselves to our new neighbors. Mount Craven had always been an unremarkable peak in the mountain range outside Bellwood, until today. As the team approached in Max's vehicle, the change was immediately apparent. A structure resembling a small temple had appeared near the summit, its architecture unlike anything native to Earth. Dark stone pulsed with reddish energy, and the air around it seemed to warp and distort. Definitely not natural, Kevin commented as they parked at the base of the hiking trail. The energy readings are off the charts, Max reported, checking his scanner. Similar to what we recorded from the Sith holocron, but magnified 100-fold. Ben studied the structure through binoculars. I don't see any guards or defenses. Could be a trap. Of course it's a trap, Gwen said. But we still need to investigate. Tetra had been silent since their arrival, her eyes closed in concentration. Now she spoke, her voice tight with concern. There's a presence here, not physical, but a shadow in the Force. Watching. Waiting. Can you tell what it wants? Ben asked. Not specifically, Tetra admitted. But its nature is unmistakable. Dark. Patient. Ancient. Great, another cryptic supervillain, Kevin muttered. Just once, I'd like to fight someone with simple, straightforward evil plans. We'll approach from different directions, Max decided, pulling equipment from the vehicle. I'll coordinate from here and monitor for any changes in the energy patterns. The plan was straightforward. Ben would approach from the air as Big Chill, using his intangibility to scout the structure. Gwen and Kevin would circle around to the far side, ready to provide backup. Tetra would approach directly, using her experience to assess the Force implications of the site. Big Chill soared above the strange temple, his ice-blue form nearly invisible against the clear sky. From above, he could see that the structure formed a perfect geometric pattern, a hexagon with intricate symbols carved into the stone. Guys, this thing has some kind of writing or symbols all over it, he reported through his communicator. Not like anything I've seen before. Can you get images? Max requested. Working on it, Big Chill replied, descending closer to capture better visuals with his Omnitrix's built-in scanner. As he neared the structure, the air around him seemed to thicken, becoming more resistant to his movement. Even more concerning, his connection to the Force became distorted, like looking through rippling water. Something's wrong with this place, he transmitted. It's affecting my Force perception. Pull back, Tetra's voice came immediately. Don't touch the structure. Big Chill began to ascend, but suddenly the reddish energy pulsing through the temple flared brilliantly. A beam of crimson light shot upward, engulfing him before he could phase into intangibility. Pain unlike anything he'd experienced before surged through his body. It wasn't physical pain, but something deeper, as if the energy was attacking his very connection to the Force. Ben. Gwen's voice came distantly through the communicator as he plummeted toward the temple, the Omnitrix timing out mid-fall from the energy disruption. His human form crashed onto the stone surface of the temple, the impact knocking the breath from his lungs. As he gasped for air, the reddish energy surrounded him, seeming to scan or probe his body with particular focus on the Omnitrix. Through blurred vision, Ben saw the symbols carved into the stone begin to glow, pulsing in sequence as if activating. The entire structure hummed with increasing power. Get out of there. Max's urgent voice came through his communicator. Energy levels are spiking dramatically. Ben struggled to his feet, fighting against the strange heaviness in the air. The Omnitrix was cycling through recharge, its face glowing yellow instead of green. Before he could reach the edge of the structure, the temple's center opened like the iris of a massive eye, revealing a swirling vortex of energy. From within this vortex rose a holographic figure, massive, shrouded, with eyes that glowed the same crimson as the temple's energy. At last, the figure spoke, its voice resonating not just through the air but through the Force itself. The convergence I have awaited. The one who bridges worlds. Who are you? Ben demanded, still struggling to move normally against the oppressive energy. One who has watched the rise and fall of empires, the figure replied. One who has studied the Force across 1,000 worlds. You may call me Darth Vexus. The name sent a chill through Ben that had nothing to do with the mountain air. What do you want with Earth? Want? I have already claimed it, young one. This world has been mine since before your species learned to harness fire. I merely allowed it to develop, undisturbed. Until now. The hologram expanded, revealing more of the figure, a humanoid form wrapped in ornate armor and flowing robes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Your emergence was unexpected, Vexus continued. A force-sensitive wielding technology capable of genetic manipulation on a fundamental level. The Omnitrix, I believe you call it. A fascinating convergence of biology and energy. From the corner of his eye, Ben could see Gwen and Kevin approaching from one side, with Tetra circling from another angle. He needed to keep Vexus talking. So you've been stalking Earth for what, centuries? Kind of a long game, isn't it? Time is a resource, not an obstacle, when one understands the deeper mysteries of the Force, Vexus replied. His attention shifted suddenly. Ah, and you've brought a Jedi. How, convenient. Tetra stepped forward, her lightsaber ignited and ready. Sith, she acknowledged, her voice steady despite the palpable darkness emanating from the hologram. Your kind was thought extinguished. As were yours, Vexus countered smoothly. Yet here we both stand, last remnants of ancient orders. The difference being, of course, that my survival was by design, not desperate chance. The hologram turned its attention back to Ben. You have potential beyond your understanding. Your connection to the Force, combined with the Omnitrix's capabilities, opens possibilities that transcend conventional limitations. If you're trying to recruit me, save your breath, Ben retorted. I've turned down better offers from scarier guys than you. Vexus made a sound that might have been laughter. Recruitment implies choice. I simply state facts. You will serve my purpose, whether willingly or not. The temple's energy surged again, the symbols pulsing more rapidly. Similar energy signatures suddenly appeared on Max's scanner from locations worldwide. All nexus points are activating simultaneously, Max reported urgently. Whatever he's planning is happening now. Tetra moved with blinding speed, leaping onto the temple structure and slashing at the control mechanisms with her lightsaber. The blade sparked against invisible barriers, unable to penetrate the energy field. The time for first contact has ended, Vexus declared. The convergence begins. When next we meet, Ben Tennyson, it will be in person. Prepare yourself accordingly. The hologram collapsed back into the vortex, which sealed shut with a concussive blast that knocked everyone back. The temple's energy flared one final time, then settled into a steady, ominous pulse. Ben, thrown clear of the structure, sat up groggily as Gwen rushed to his side. Are you okay? She asked, helping him to his feet. Yeah, just dizzy, he replied, checking the Omnitrix. It had reset to active status, though the dial seemed to be cycling more slowly than usual. What just happened? Nothing good, Kevin said, joining them. That thing is still pumping out energy, and according to Max, so are all the others worldwide. Tetra approached, her lightsaber deactivated but still in hand. Her expression was grave. Darth Vexus. The name is ancient, even by Sith standards. Mentioned in forbidden texts as a seeker of immortality and dimensional manipulation. Great, so we're dealing with an immortal Sith Lord who's been secretly watching Earth for centuries, Ben summarized. Any other good news? The nexus points he's established create a global network, Max explained, joining them with his scanner. They're generating some kind of harmonic pattern in the Force, too complex for our instruments to fully analyze. It's a preparation, Tetra said with certainty. These sites are anchor points for something larger. Possibly a gateway or a summoning ritual. Ben looked back at the pulsing temple. So how do we shut them down? That's the problem, Max admitted. Any attempt to disrupt the energy patterns could potentially trigger whatever they're building toward. We need to understand exactly what Vexus is planning before we intervene. Which means research, Gwen concluded. If he's as ancient as he claims, there must be records, legends, something we can use to understand his methods. I have access to certain Jedi records that survived with me, Tetra offered. And the plumbers might have encountered similar energy patterns before, even if they didn't recognize them for what they were. Kevin gestured toward the temple. In the meantime, what do we do about these things? We can't just leave them pumping out evil Sith energy across the planet. We establish monitoring stations, Max decided. Track every fluctuation, gather data, and prepare countermeasures for when we do understand what we're facing. Ben stared at the pulsing structure, remembering the sensation of the energy probing the Omnitrix. He's interested in me specifically, he said. Or rather, in the combination of the Omnitrix and force sensitivity. Which makes you both our greatest asset and our greatest vulnerability, Tetra noted. Your training must intensify immediately. Whatever Vexus is planning, you appear central to it. As they made their way back to the vehicle, Ben couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in their conflict. This wasn't just another alien invasion or power-hungry villain. Darth Vexus represented something older, more patient, and potentially more dangerous than anything they'd faced before. Tetra, he said as they drove back toward Bellwood, you said Jedi and Sith are ancient orders, but just how old are we talking? The Jedi Order existed for over 25,000 years before its fall, she replied. The Sith split from the Jedi thousands of years before that, following a schism in philosophy and practice. And this Vexus guy claims to have been watching Earth since prehistoric times, Ben mused. That would make him impossibly ancient, even by Sith standards, Tetra confirmed. No being naturally lives so long. He must have discovered some method of extending his existence, likely through forbidden Sith alchemy or ritual. Wonderful, Kevin commented. So we're fighting the Force equivalent of a vampire. Gwen had been unusually quiet since their encounter. Now she spoke, her voice thoughtful. He called it a convergence. Multiple times. Like something coming together that wasn't supposed to. The Omnitrix and Force sensitivity, Ben suggested. That's what he seemed focused on. Maybe, Gwen agreed. But what if it's bigger than that? What if the convergence is about our world and his, two galaxies that weren't supposed to intersect? The implication hung heavily in the air as they continued toward Bellwood, the first signs of dusk painting the sky in colors that seemed eerily similar to the pulsing energy of the Nexus temples. Whatever Darth Vexus had set in motion, one thing was clear, the countdown had begun, and Earth stood at the center of a conflict spanning not just galaxies, but possibly millennia. Chapter 3, Ascension. 1 week after discovering the Nexus temples, Ben jolted awake at 3 a.m., sweat soaking his sheets despite the cool night air flowing through his open window. The same nightmare again, the third time this week. He sat up, rubbing his face and trying to shake off the lingering images. A red sky. Black ships descending. And that figure, Darth Vexus, standing amid ruins with his hand outstretched toward Ben. Just a dream, he muttered, though he knew better. Ben slipped out of bed and grabbed a t-shirt from his floor. No point trying to sleep now. These weren't ordinary nightmares, they were Force visions. Tetra had explained how Force-sensitive sometimes glimpsed possible futures, especially in times of crisis. He padded downstairs in bare feet, careful not to wake his parents. In the kitchen, he grabbed a soda from the fridge and leaned against the counter, staring out at the quiet neighborhood. His phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Gwen, had another one. You too? Ben typed back quickly, yeah. Same as before but clearer. Meeting at Tetra's at dawn. The reply came seconds later, already called her. She wants us there ASAP. So much for a quiet night. Ben headed back upstairs to change, checking the Omnitrix out of habit. The device seemed normal, but lately he'd noticed subtle changes in how it interacted with his Force abilities, like they were gradually synchronizing on some fundamental level. 20 minutes later, Ben's car pulled up outside Tetra's small house on the outskirts of town. Despite the early hour, lights glowed in all the windows. Kevin's car was already parked outside, and Ben spotted Grandpa Max's RV down the street. Full house, he muttered, grabbing his jacket and heading to the door. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Gwen and Kevin sat close together on Tetra's couch, while Max studied data on a tablet. Tetra herself stood by the window, gazing out at the pre-dawn darkness, her posture rigid with concern. "Ben," she acknowledged as he entered. "The visions have intensified?" He nodded, dropping onto an armchair. This time I could hear voices. Vexus was saying something about the final convergence and breaking the barrier. "I saw something new too," Gwen added. "A laboratory of some kind. Plumber tech mixed with something older, crystals and energy patterns like those temple structures." Tetra turned from the window, her expression grave. "These aren't just dreams. The Force is warning us of imminent danger." "Got that much," Kevin said, gesturing to the tablet Max was holding. "But that's not all. Show him, Max." Grandpa Max handed Ben the tablet, which displayed news reports from around the world, bizarre phenomena occurring near each Nexus temple site. "It started yesterday," Max explained. "Gravitational anomalies, electromagnetic disruptions, even temporal distortions in some locations. The temples are affecting local reality." Ben scrolled through the reports, each more disturbing than the last. People witnessing impossible events, objects moving against gravity, electronics displaying information from broadcasts that hadn't happened yet, shadow figures appearing and vanishing. "The veil between dimensions is thinning," Tetra said quietly. "The Nexus points are functioning as anchors, weakening the natural barriers." "In English?" Kevin prompted. "Vexus is creating doorways," Tetra clarified. "Using the Force to bridge between his location and ours." Ben set down the tablet. "So how do we stop him?" "That's what we've been working on," Gwen said. "I've been researching Sith rituals in the records Tetra salvaged, while Grandpa's team analyzes the energy patterns from the temples. We believe we've identified a resonance frequency that could disrupt the network," Max explained. "But we'd need to target all Nexus points simultaneously to prevent Vexus from simply rerouting the energy flow. Which means coordinating a global counterstrike with plumber teams on every continent," Kevin added. "Already in motion, but it'll take time to position everyone." Ben frowned. "How much time do we have?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "Based on the acceleration of anomalies and your increasingly vivid visions," Tetra finally said, "I estimate no more than 48 hours before Vexus completes whatever passage he's constructing." "So what's the plan?" Ben asked, automatically reaching for the Omnitrix. "You and I will continue your specialized training," Tetra said. "Focus on maintaining Force awareness across all transformations. Gwen and Kevin will work with Max to prepare the disruption technology." "And if Vexus shows up before we're ready?" Ben pressed. Tetra met his gaze steadily. "Then we face him with whatever resources we have. But make no mistake, from what I sense of his power, he is beyond any adversary you've encountered before." The training room beneath Plumber headquarters had been specially modified for Force exercises. Dampening fields prevented energy signatures from being detected outside, while specialized equipment allowed for monitoring and analysis of Ben's progress. Again, Tetra instructed as Ben, in the form of chromastone, attempted to channel Force energy through the crystalline alien's natural energy absorption capabilities. Chromastone raised his hands, focusing on the practice drones hovering around him. In this form, the Force felt like light passing through prism, fractured, colorful, but powerful in its own way. He reached out, connecting to the drones through the Force while simultaneously drawing in energy through his crystalline body. The combination created a spectacular effect. The rainbow energy chromastone normally projected now spiraled with threads of blue Force energy, striking the drones with unprecedented precision. "Better," Tetra noted. "You're finding the natural synergy between your alien abilities and the Force. Each form offers different possibilities." The Omnitrix symbol on Chromastone's chest beeped, signaling an imminent timeout. Ben shifted back to human form, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Some forms feel natural now," he said, catching his breath. Chromastone, Diamondhead, 4 arms, they connect to the force easily. Others still fight me. The crystalline forms conduct energy more efficiently, Tetra explained. And 4-arm species has natural force affinity. What transformation gives you the most difficulty? Ben considered. Probably Echo. When I split into multiples, my force awareness gets fragmented too. It's like trying to look through a dozen pairs of eyes at once. An interesting challenge, Tetra mused. Perhaps we should. An alarm blared throughout the facility, cutting her off. Red emergency lights flashed as Max's voice came over the intercom, all personnel to alert stations. Unidentified energy surge detected in orbit. Ben and Tetra rushed to the command center, where plumber technicians monitored a massive holographic display of Earth and the surrounding space. A pulsating red anomaly had appeared in orbit directly above Bellwood. What is it? Ben asked as they joined Max at the central console. Some kind of dimensional rift, Max replied, not looking up from the readings. It appeared 5 minutes ago and has been growing steadily since. The resonance from all nexus points is converging on that location, a technician reported. Energy levels rising exponentially. Gwen and Kevin burst into the command center, having rushed from the lab where they'd been working on the disruption technology. Please tell me the countermeasure is ready, Ben said as they approached. Kevin shook his head. Not even close. We need another day at minimum. Tetra stepped forward, studying the holographic display with intense focus. It's too late for prevention, she said gravely. Vexus has found his way through. As if confirming her words, the red anomaly in the display suddenly expanded, forming a swirling vortex. From within this dimensional portal emerged a single ship, black, angular, with design elements that somehow looked both ancient and advanced beyond Earth technology. That's not good, Kevin muttered. Incoming transmission, a communications officer announced. It's broadcasting on all frequencies worldwide. Put it through, Max ordered. The main screen flickered, and the shrouded figure from Ben's visions appeared. No longer a hologram, Darth Vexus now appeared in the flesh, or whatever passed for it after centuries of dark side corruption. His face remained mostly concealed within a deep hood, but glowing red eyes burned from the shadows. Ornate armor covered his body, etched with symbols similar to those on the Nexus temples. People of Earth, Vexus began, his voice resonating with unnatural power. Your world stands at a crossroads, a convergence of destinies centuries in the making. I am Darth Vexus, rightful claimant to this sphere you call home. Ben stepped closer to the screen, his fists clenching involuntarily. Long have I observed your development, Vexus continued. A useful experiment in isolation, a world of potential force users developing without guidance or interference. Now that experiment reaches its conclusion. The camera view widened, revealing a chamber behind Vexus filled with artifacts and technology, some recognizably alien, others completely foreign even to plumber knowledge. I require but one thing to complete my work, the being called Ben Tennyson and the device he wields. Deliver him to the coordinates I provide within 6 hours, and your world will be permitted to continue its existence under my guidance. Refuse, and witness firsthand why the Sith were feared across countless star systems. The transmission cut abruptly, replaced by a set of coordinates pinpointing a location in the desert outside Bellwood. Well, that was dramatic, Kevin commented, breaking the stunned silence that followed. He's lying, Ben said immediately. Even if we handed me over, there's no way he'd just leave Earth alone. Agreed, Max said, already mobilizing teams. This is clearly a trap, but we need to respond. If that ship descends to Earth, its technology far exceeds current plumber capabilities, Tetra finished for him. We must engage Vexus on our terms, not his. So what's the plan? Gwen asked. We can't just ignore him, but we can't give him what he wants either. Ben studied the coordinates on the display. We meet him where he asked, but with backup. Lots of it. And a surprise or two he won't be expecting. What kind of surprise can we possibly offer an ancient Sith Lord? Kevin asked skeptically. A determined smile spread across Ben's face. Something he doesn't understand yet, how the Omnitrix and the Force work together. He thinks he wants both, but he doesn't know what happens when they're truly in sync. Max nodded, understanding Ben's thinking. We'll establish a perimeter at the coordinates, hidden from immediate detection. Full plumber support, but keeping a low profile until needed. I should go alone initially, Ben suggested. Make him think we're complying while you get into position. Absolutely not, Gwen protested. You're not facing him solo. I'll accompany him, Tetra interjected. My presence will be expected, Sith and Jedi are ancient enemies. My obvious involvement will make our deception more convincing while distracting him from our true preparations. Ben nodded agreement. Gwen, Kevin, and the plumbers maintain the perimeter. We need that disruption technology ready to deploy the moment we have an opportunity. It's risky, Max cautioned. Vexus has had centuries to plan this. We're improvising on the fly. Yeah, well, improvising is kind of our specialty, Ben replied with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. Besides, we have one advantage, he wants me alive. He needs the Omnitrix and my connection to the Force for whatever he's planning. Do not underestimate a Sith's willingness to inflict suffering while keeping you alive, Tetra warned. There are fates worse than death in the dark side arsenal. Noted, Ben said more soberly. But we're out of options and running out of time. That ship won't just sit in orbit forever. Max checked his watch. You have 4 hours until the meeting. Use them wisely. 3.5 hours later, Ben stood alone at the designated coordinates, a flat expanse of desert with mountains visible in the distance. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sand, the heat still intense despite the approaching evening. Plumber teams had established a perimeter a mile out in all directions, carefully shielded from detection. Gwen, Kevin, and Max coordinated from a mobile command center disguised as an abandoned gas station near the highway. And Tetra. I sense no immediate presence, came her voice through his earpiece. The former Jedi was positioned on a rocky outcropping 300 yards away, concealed but ready to intervene. But the Force is disturbed here. As if reality itself is strained. Ben nodded, knowing she could see him through binoculars. Stay ready. If this guy's half as powerful as we think, this gets ugly fast. He checked the Omnitrix one last time. Fully charged, ready for whatever transformation he might need. He'd spent the past hours with Tetra, practicing rapid transitions between key alien forms while maintaining Force awareness throughout. Movement detected in upper atmosphere, Max reported through the comm, something's descending rapidly toward your position. Ben looked up, shielding his eyes against the sun. At first, he saw nothing but clear blue sky. Then a dark speck appeared, growing larger by the second, too fast for conventional aircraft. That's not his ship, Ben noted, watching the objects approach. Too small. Some kind of shuttle or probe, Gwen suggested over the comm. Energy readings are consistent with the technology we observed on his main vessel. The object slowed as it neared the ground, resolving into a sleek black shuttle with angular wings that folded upward as it landed 50 yards from Ben's position. Sand swirled in the backwash from its engines, momentarily obscuring Ben's view. When the dust settled, a ramp extended from the shuttle's underside. A single figure descended, Darth Vexus, his dark robes flowing around him despite the lack of wind, red eyes gleaming from within his hood. Ben Tennyson, he called, his voice carrying effortlessly across the distance. You've made a wise choice. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Ben replied, standing his ground. I came to talk, not surrender. Vexus approached with measured steps, each movement deliberate and precise. Up close, Ben could see more details of the Sith Lord's appearance, skin pale as bone, cracked with dark veins, and ornate armor visible beneath his robes, inscribed with symbols that seemed to shift and change as if alive. Talk, Vexus repeated, amusement evident in his voice. How very diplomatic. Your reputation suggested a more impulsive approach. People change, Ben said with a shrug. And threatening my planet tends to make me take things seriously. Vexus stopped 10 paces away, studying Ben with those burning eyes. Your force signature has evolved since our brief connection. Training with the Jedi, I presume. Right on cue, Tetra revealed herself, leaping from her hiding place to land beside Ben. Her lightsaber remained unignited but ready in her hand. This world is under my protection, she stated firmly. Your presence here violates treaties established millennia ago designating this sector as neutral territory. Vexus laughed, a sound like dry leaves crumbling. Treaties established by a republic long fallen and a Jedi order long extinct. You appeal to laws that no longer exist, last of the Jedi. The principles behind them endure, Tetra countered. As does the light side of the Force. Charming rhetoric, Vexus dismissed. His attention returned to Ben. But ultimately irrelevant. I haven't crossed galaxies for philosophical debate. Why have you come? Ben asked directly. What's so special about Earth that you've been watching it for centuries? Perception, Vexus replied, beginning to circle them slowly. This world exists at a unique confluence of force currents, a nexus point between dimensions. The beings who evolved here have natural potential that, properly harnessed, offers possibilities unavailable elsewhere. Properly harnessed, Ben repeated skeptically. You mean enslaved? I mean elevated, Vexus corrected. For millennia, I've studied the barrier between life and death, between dimensions, between possibility and reality. This planet, and specifically you, Ben Tennyson, represent the final component in my work. He gestured toward the Omnitrix. That device transcends mere technology. It restructures matter at the quantum level, rebuilds consciousness across species barriers. Combined with force sensitivity. He paused, his eyes gleaming brighter. The possibilities are infinite. Sorry to disappoint, Ben said, but the Omnitrix stays with me. And Earth stays free. Vexus sighed, a theatrical gesture lacking genuine emotion. I expected resistance. It is the nature of lesser beings to cling to their limitations. Without warning, he extended his hand. Lightning, not the blue-white of natural electricity but deep crimson shot through with black, erupted from his fingertips, striking the ground at their feet. Ben and Tetra leapt back, Tetra's lightsaber igniting with a snap hiss as she moved to a defensive position. I did not cross galaxies to be denied, Vexus stated, all pretense of civility gone. The Omnitrix will serve my purpose. Whether attached to you or harvested from your corpse matters little. Now. Ben shouted into his comm from all directions, plumber agents emerged from concealment, weapons trained on Vexus. Specialized containment technology activated, creating a perimeter of energy barriers designed to suppress force abilities based on what they'd learned from the Nexus temples. Vexus merely glanced around, appearing more amused than concerned. Primitive technology. Admirable effort. With a casual gesture, he sent a pulse of force energy outward. The barriers shattered, and plumber agents were thrown backward like leaves in a hurricane. Some crashed into rocks, others were slammed into the ground with bone-breaking force. Stop! Ben shouted, activating the Omnitrix. In a flash of green light, he transformed into Humongosaur, immediately growing to his full 30-foot height. This is between you and me. No, child, Vexus replied calmly. This is between me and destiny. You are merely a means to an end. Tetra launched herself at the Sith Lord, lightsaber slashing in a blue arc toward his neck. Vexus didn't even turn to face her, he simply raised a hand, catching her mid-leap with the force and suspending her in the air. The old forms, he noted dismissively. Predictable. Outdated. With a flick of his wrist, he sent Tetra flying into a nearby rock formation. She managed to twist in the air, absorbing some of the impact, but still hit hard enough to momentarily stun her. Humongousaur charged, the ground shaking with each massive step. He swung a giant fist down at Vexus, putting the full force of his weight behind the blow. Vexus caught it, not with his hand, but with the force, stopping Humongousaur's punch inches from his face. The air between them distorted with the conflicting energies. Impressive strength, Vexus acknowledged. But brute force alone is meaningless against the dark side. Crimson lightning crackled around his outstretched hand, traveling up Humongousaur's arm. Pain unlike anything Ben had experienced ripped through him, not just physical agony, but a deeper violation, as if the energy was attacking his connection to the force itself. The Vaxosaurian form channels force energy poorly, Vexus observed clinically. Try another. Before Ben could react, Vexus released a pulse of energy that disrupted the Omnitrix's stability. In a flash of green, Humongousaur was replaced by Swampfire, a transformation Ben hadn't selected. Fascinating, Vexus commented, continuing his assault without pause. The device responds to external force manipulation. Useful information. Swampfire recovered quickly, summoning flames infused with force energy, a technique Ben had been practicing. The blue-green fire spiraled toward Vexus in patterns designed to be unpredictable. The Sith Lord swept his hand in an arc, transforming the flames into a swirling vortex around himself before redirecting them back at Ben with amplified intensity. Swampfire absorbed the worst of the flames, his plant-based biology resistant to fire damage, but the force energy component burned through his defenses, scorching him from within. Through the comm link, Ben could hear the chaos of the battle extending around them. Gwen and Kevin had joined the fight, trying to reach his position while Plumber agents regrouped for another assault. You cannot win this through conventional combat, Vexus stated, advancing slowly. Your allies fall. Your defenses crumble. And you have barely glimpsed my true power. To demonstrate, he raised both hands skyward. The Nexus temples scattered across Earth responded to his call, their energy surging visibly even from space as satellite imagery showed on Plumber monitors. The desert around them trembled as reality itself seemed to warp. Massive stones tore free from the ground, hovering in a deadly orbit around the Sith Lord. The sky darkened unnaturally, clouds forming and swirling into a vortex centered above them. This world bends to my will, Vexus declared. As it was always meant to. Swampfire braced himself, reaching deeper into his connection with the Force. There, a technique Tetra had taught him for emergency situations. Focusing intently, he triggered a transformation from within rather than through the Omnitrix controls. Green light flashed again, replacing Swampfire with feedback, an alien form specialized in energy absorption and redirection. Let's see how you handle this, feedback challenged, extending his antennae and plugging his fingertips directly into the ground. The earth beneath them crackled with electricity as feedback tapped into the planet's natural electromagnetic field, amplifying it through his body. Simultaneously, he reached out through the force, creating a circuit between himself and the hovering stones around Vexus. The stones suddenly reversed direction, accelerating toward the Sith Lord from all angles while discharging massive electrical bursts. For the first time, Vexus appeared momentarily surprised. He deflected most of the projectiles, but one struck his shoulder, cracking the ornate armor beneath his robes. Another grazed his hood, pushing it back to reveal more of his face, a once human visage now twisted by centuries of dark side corruption, skin stretched tight over an almost skeletal structure. Clever, he acknowledged, genuine interest in his voice. The conductoid form harmonizes well with force energy. Your adaptability exceeds expectations. From behind Vexus, Tetra had recovered and rejoined the fight. She moved in perfect synchronization with Ben's attack, her lightsaber a blur as she pressed the momentary advantage. Vexus was forced to divide his attention, blocking Tetra's lightsaber with a blade of pure force energy that materialized in his hand, a technique Ben had never seen before. A force saber, Tetra gasped, recognizing the ancient weapon. Impossible. Nothing is impossible through the dark side, Vexus replied, parrying her attacks with growing ease. A lesson you Jedi never grasped. While they dueled, feedback continued channeling energy, creating increasingly powerful discharges aimed at disrupting Vexus's concentration. It seemed to be working. The Sith Lord's movements became slightly less fluid as he fought on two fronts. Then Gwen and Kevin finally broke through to their position, adding their abilities to the assault. Gwen's mana construct supported Tetra's lightsaber attacks while Kevin, having absorbed a unique alloy developed specifically for this confrontation, engaged Vexus directly. For a brief moment, it seemed they might be gaining the upper hand. 4 against 1, each using their unique abilities in coordination. Then Vexus laughed, a sound that chilled Ben to his core even in feedback's form. Enough preview, the Sith Lord declared. The demonstration concludes. A wave of dark side energy exploded outward from his body, so intense it manifested visibly as a crimson shockwave. Kevin was sent flying backward, his specialized armor cracking under the pressure. Gwen's shield shattered, the backlash knocking her unconscious immediately. Tetra managed to resist longer, her lightsaber cutting through the energy wave, but even she was eventually overwhelmed. She fell to one knee, using her weapon to brace herself against the onslaught. Feedback's energy absorption abilities provided some protection, but the dark side component of the attack bypassed his physical defenses, attacking through the force directly. The Omnitrix symbol on his chest flickered erratically before timing out, leaving Ben human and defenseless. Vexus stood unscathed at the center of devastation, not a hair out of place despite the battle. Around him, plumber agents lay injured or unconscious. Only Ben and Tetra remained even partially functional. Your resistance is instructive, Vexus noted, approaching Ben with measured steps. But ultimately futile. Ben tried to activate the Omnitrix again, but the device was cycling through reset mode, temporarily unavailable. The time for games has ended, Vexus continued. You will accompany me to my ship, where the final phase of convergence will commence. I'd rather die, Ben spat, struggling to his feet despite the pain racking his body. That option is not available, Vexus replied coldly. Your consciousness is required for the procedure, though your cooperation is not. He extended his hand, and Ben felt invisible forces wrap around him, lifting him off the ground. He struggled against the grip, reaching desperately for the force techniques Tetra had taught him, but Vexus's power was overwhelming. Your training is incomplete, Vexus observed. A pity. With proper guidance, you might have achieved greatness willingly. From her position nearby, Tetra made one final effort, hurling her lightsaber with perfect accuracy toward Vexus's unprotected back. Without looking, the Sith Lord caught the weapon in mid-air with the force, suspending it inches from his spine. Predictable to the end, he sighed, turning the lightsaber slowly to face its owner. The Jedi never evolve. With a casual gesture, he sent the lightsaber flying back toward Tetra. She attempted to catch it with the force, but in her weakened state, her timing was off. The blade pierced her shoulder, missing her heart by inches but still inflicting a serious wound. Tetra! Ben shouted, renewing his struggles against Vexus's hold. She will live, Vexus stated dispassionately. Long enough to witness what you become. The shuttle's engines ignited behind them, ramp extending in preparation for departure. This world awaits transformation, Vexus continued, moving toward the ship with Ben suspended helplessly before him. And you, Ben Tennyson, shall be the instrument of that change. Through the haze of pain and defeat, Ben caught sight of Max crawling toward a fallen plumber weapon. Their eyes met briefly, and Ben understood the message in his grandfather's gaze, this isn't over. As Vexus carried him up the shuttle ramp, Ben focused on that promise. Whatever happened next, he wouldn't face it alone. The journey to Vexus's orbiting vessel took mere minutes. Through the shuttle's viewport, Ben caught glimpses of the massive ship, a structure that seemed more citadel than spacecraft, bristling with technology that blended ancient Sith aesthetics with elements far beyond even advanced alien tech he'd encountered before. Impressive, isn't it? Vexus commented, noting Ben's interest. The culmination of centuries of development. A mobile nexus point capable of transcending dimensional barriers. Ben remained silent, conserving his strength while surreptitiously checking the Omnitrix. The device was still recharging, but the cycle was nearly complete. He just needed to buy time. Your defiance is amusing but unnecessary, Vexus continued as they docked with the larger vessel. What I offer is not destruction but transformation. Earth will become the focal point of a new empire spanning dimensions, not merely galaxies. Yeah, with you as supreme ruler, Ben finally responded. Hard pass. Perspective is limited by experience, Vexus said dismissively. You cannot comprehend the scale of what I've set in motion. The shuttle docked with a metallic clank, and the ramp lowered to reveal a vast chamber within the main ship. Ben was floated forward like a puppet, still immobilized by Vexus's force grip. The chamber appeared to be a combination of laboratory and ritual space. Ancient Sith artifacts shared space with cutting-edge technology. At the center stood a massive apparatus, a circular platform surrounded by crystalline structures that pulsed with the same crimson energy as the Nexus temples. Behold the convergence engine, Vexus announced with evident pride. The mechanism by which the barriers between dimensions will be permanently breached. Ben was deposited onto an examination table that immediately secured him with energy restraints. Though Vexus released his force grip, the bindings were equally effective at preventing movement. What exactly are you planning? Ben asked, stalling while studying the apparatus. Understanding his enemy's plan might reveal weaknesses. Creation, Vexus replied simply. Or rather, recreation. The universe as it should have been before the ancient schism. He moved to a control panel, activating systems throughout the chamber. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing the Nexus temples worldwide pulsing in synchronized patterns. Billions of years ago, before your species emerged from primordial ooze, a cataclysm split the unified force into light and dark aspects, Vexus explained, making adjustments to the equipment. This fundamental division created separate dimensions, separate possibilities, realities that should have remained unified. As he spoke, he approached Ben with a scanning device, passing it over the Omnitrix. Your device, the Omnitrix, is the key I've sought for centuries. It manipulates the fundamental code of existence, allowing consciousness to shift between forms while maintaining continuity. It transforms DNA, Ben corrected. It's not some mystical reality warper. You understand so little of its true nature, Vexus said with something approaching pity. Azimuth built better than even he realized. The Omnitrix doesn't merely copy DNA, it interfaces with the quantum field that underlies all matter. The same field the force flows through. The scanner beeped as it completed its analysis, and Vexus returned to the control panel, uploading the data. When combined with force sensitivity of sufficient strength, he continued, the Omnitrix's transformation matrix can be amplified and redirected. Not merely to transform individuals, but reality itself. The implication dawned on Ben with horrifying clarity. You're going to try to use me to transform the entire universe. Not transform, Vexus corrected. Restore. Return it to its original, unified state, with the dark side ascendant, as it was always meant to be. Across the chamber, equipment hummed to life. The crystalline structures surrounding the central platform began rotating slowly, their energy pulses accelerating. The process requires a conduit, Vexus explained, returning to Ben's side. A being capable of channeling both the Force and the Omnitrix's energy simultaneously. You, Ben Tennyson, are the perfect vessel, though the process will likely consume you. There's a flaw in your plan, Ben pointed out. I'm not exactly volunteering for this suicide mission. Your cooperation is irrelevant, Vexus dismissed. The procedure will extract what is needed regardless of your willingness. He placed a hand on Ben's forehead, and immediately Ben felt an invasive presence pushing into his mind, cold, ancient, relentless. Memories flashed before his eyes as Vexus searched through his experiences with the Omnitrix, studying transformations and the sensations associated with them. Fascinating, Vexus murmured. You've barely scratched the surface of the device's capabilities. The mental component alone. Ben struggled against the mental intrusion, employing the force techniques Tetra had taught him for shielding his mind. To his surprise, he managed to push back, forcing Vexus to withdraw slightly. Impressive resistance, the Sith Lord acknowledged. The Jedi taught you well. But ultimately futile. He gestured, and mechanical arms descended from the ceiling, positioning themselves around Ben's restrained form. One held what appeared to be a modified version of the Omnitrix, though corrupted with Sith technology, the familiar green replaced with pulsing red. A replica, Ben realized aloud. You created your own version of the Omnitrix. A simplified variant, Vexus confirmed. Capable of interfacing with the original while channeling dark side energy. The perfect conductor for the convergence engine. The mechanical arm lowered the device toward Ben's Omnitrix, preparing to establish a connection between the two. Once linked, Vexus continued, the engine will draw power from both devices and your force signature simultaneously, creating a cascading reaction through all nexus points on Earth. The dimensional barrier will collapse, and reality will be rewritten according to the original pattern, with me as its architect. The replica Omnitrix hovered inches from Ben's wrist. In a matter of seconds, the connection would be established and the process would begin. Then, miraculously, the ship shuddered under impact. Alarms blared throughout the chamber as Vexus turned toward a monitoring station. Impossible, he muttered, genuine surprise in his voice for the first time. They couldn't have developed countermeasures so quickly. On the displays, multiple smaller vessels appeared, plumber ships, modified with technology Ben didn't recognize, firing concentrated energy beams at specific points on Vexus's vessel. Persistent vermin, Vexus growled, moving quickly to a command console. They target the stabilization nodes, they've analyzed the ship's structure. Another impact rocked the vessel, more violent than the first. The mechanical arms retracted automatically, safety protocols engaging to protect the sensitive equipment. Ben felt the Omnitrix complete its recharge cycle, the familiar beep nearly inaudible beneath the alarms. Now he just needed an opportunity to activate it. Vexus was momentarily distracted, focusing on defensive systems and shouting commands to automated processes throughout the ship. The energy restraints holding Ben flickered briefly during a particularly strong hit from the plumber vessels. That momentary weakening was all Ben needed. Summoning every ounce of force ability he possessed, he pushed against the restraints as they fluctuated. With a surge of effort, he broke free of one arm restraint, enough to reach the Omnitrix. Vexus, he called, drawing the Sith Lord's attention. You forgot something important about me. And what might that be? Vexus asked, turning from the console with narrowed eyes. Ben grinned, slapping the activated Omnitrix. I work really well under pressure. Green light flashed as he transformed into Upgrade, the galvanic mechamorph perfectly suited for technological interaction. Before Vexus could react, Upgrade slipped free of the remaining restraints, his liquid metal form flowing across the laboratory floor. No! Vexus shouted, realizing Ben's intent a moment too late. Upgrade reached the convergence engine, flowing up and over the control systems. As a mechamorph, he could interface directly with technology, understanding and manipulating it from within. Combined with his force sensitivity, the effect was exponentially more powerful. Let's see how your engine handles an upgrade, Ben quipped, merging completely with the apparatus. Immediately, he felt the complex systems of the device, and more importantly, its connections to the Nexus temples on Earth. Vexus had created a network, each temple feeding energy to the ship in a carefully calibrated pattern. Ben didn't try to destroy it, that might trigger a catastrophic release of energy. Instead, he began subtly altering the calibration, reversing the flow so that instead of drawing power from Earth to the ship, the energy cycled back toward the temples in a feedback loop. Vexus attacked, crimson lightning striking Upgrade's merged form. The pain was intense, but in this form, the electricity was partially absorbed and redirected into the system itself. You cannot comprehend what you're interfering with. Vexus raged, escalating his assault. Centuries of preparation. Maybe not, Upgrade replied, his voice emanating from the engine itself. But I know enough to throw a wrench in the works. The ship shuddered again as the plumber vessels continued their coordinated attack. Through his connection to the ship's systems, Ben could see what was happening. Tetra had provided the plumbers with the exact specifications of ancient Sith vessels, allowing them to target vulnerable points with surgical precision. Vexus abandoned his electrical attack, realizing it was ineffective against Upgrade's form. Instead, he reached out through the Force directly, attempting to tear Ben's consciousness from the machine. Your mind cannot withstand prolonged contact with the engine, he warned. It will consume you before you can disrupt it. There was truth in his words. Ben could feel the immense energies of the device straining his mental barriers. But he only needed a few more moments. There. The energy flow fully reversed, the Nexus temples now drawing power from the ship rather than feeding it. The convergence engine's crystals began vibrating at an unstable frequency, their color shifting from red to purple as the cycle accelerated beyond design parameters. What have you done? Vexus demanded, reading the fluctuations on the remaining operational displays. Upgrade separated from the machine, reforming into his standard mechamorph shape. Created my own convergence, he answered. Your Nexus points are now draining your ship's energy instead of Earth's. And they're not too picky about what kind of energy they take. As if to illustrate his point, the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Lights dimmed throughout the chamber as power systems were involuntarily redirected to feed the insatiable Nexus points. You fool! Vexus snarled, genuine fear showing through his anger for the first time. The feedback loop will create a dimensional collapse centered on this vessel. Exactly, Ben confirmed. Targeted specifically at your ship, not Earth. Hope you've got an escape pod. Vexus abandoned the controls, rushing toward Ben with inhuman speed, Force saber materializing in his hand. I will not be denied, he roared, slashing downward with enough force to cleave steel. Upgrade flowed around the attack, his amorphous form difficult to damage with physical weapons. He needed to keep Vexus occupied while the cascade reached critical levels, and he needed to find his own way off the ship before it was too late. Through his brief connection to the ship's systems, Ben had located a hangar bay with shuttlecraft. If he could reach it. The Omnitrix symbol on his chest beeped in warning, the transformation was nearing its time limit. Ben needed to make his move now. Catch me if you can, Vexus, he taunted, flowing toward a ventilation duct that his liquid metal form could easily navigate. Vexus roared in frustration, sending a massive force push that caught Upgrade just as he reached the duct. The impact slammed him against the wall, momentarily disrupting his cohesion. Your interference ends now, Vexus declared, approaching with measured steps despite the increasing instability of the ship around them. Even if this vessel is compromised, I can still complete the procedure with you alone. The Omnitrix timed out, leaving Ben human and vulnerable. He scrambled to his feet, backing away from the advancing Sith Lord. Time for Plan B, he muttered, ducking under a console as Vexus sent another force push in his direction. The ship rocked violently, throwing both of them off balance. Through the viewport, Ben could see the Nexus temples on Earth glowing with intensifying energy as they drained the ship's power. The feedback loop was accelerating beyond control. Even if you destroy this vessel, Vexus called, regaining his footing, I will survive. I have transcended physical limitations centuries ago. Maybe, Ben acknowledged, watching the Omnitrix slowly cycle back to active status. But you'll have to start over from scratch. And we'll be ready for you next time. Vexus laughed, a hollow, chilling sound. There is no next time, child. This moment, this convergence, occurs once in millennia. The alignment of forces, the specific resonance patterns, they cannot be recreated. That confirmation was exactly what Ben needed to hear. If Vexus's plan truly depended on this specific cosmic alignment, stopping him now would end the threat permanently. The Omnitrix beeped, signaling readiness just as emergency klaxons blared throughout the ship. Automated systems announced, critical instability detected. Containment failure imminent. Evacuation protocols engaged. Time to go, Ben said, activating the Omnitrix. Vexus lunged forward, but too late. Green light flashed as Ben transformed into XLR-8, the Kineceleran's incredible speed allowing him to easily evade the Sith Lord's grasp. No! Vexus shouted as XLR-8 zipped across the laboratory, knocking equipment aside to further destabilize the systems. Yes! XLR-8 countered, racing toward the exit. And by the way, Earth says goodbye. Racing through the corridors at nearly invisible speed, XLR-8 made his way toward the hangar bay, following the ship's schematics he'd glimpsed while merged with the systems. Behind him, he could feel Vexus in pursuit, slower, but drawing on the force to enhance his speed. The ship continued to deteriorate around them, sections losing power or experiencing explosive decompression as the energy drain intensified. The Nexus temples were now pulling not just power but structural integrity from the vessel, the dimensional energies Vexus had harnessed turning against their master. XLR-8 reached the hangar just as a massive shock wave rippled through the ship. The force of it threw him forward, sending him tumbling across the deck. As he regained his footing, he saw several shuttlecraft secured in launch positions, his ticket home. Before he could reach them, the hangar doors slammed shut behind him. Vexus stood in the entrance, hand extended to control the doors, his robes singed and torn from fighting through the ship's deteriorating corridors. If I am denied my ascension, the Sith Lord growled, then you will share my fate. XLR-8 glanced between Vexus and the shuttles. Even with his speed, reaching a craft and launching before Vexus could stop him would be nearly impossible. Then he noticed something through the hangar's massive viewport, a plumber ship approaching, maneuvering close to the hangar's exterior airlock. He recognized the modified design, Kevin's handiwork. My friends disagree with your plans, XLR-8 replied, nodding toward the viewport. Vexus didn't fall for the distraction. Pathetic. You think I would? The exterior airlock exploded inward, the sudden decompression catching Vexus off guard. XLR-8 anchored himself to a support pillar with his claws, while Vexus was pulled toward the breach before managing to stabilize himself with the force. Through the opening, the plumber ship extended a docking tube. The airlock cycled, and a familiar figure stepped through, Gwen, her eyes glowing with combined mana and force energy, protective shields already forming around her. Ben, she called over the howling of escaping air. Time to go. Vexus recovered quickly, sending a barrage of force lightning toward the breach. Gwen's shields held, though the strain showed on her face. XLR-8 didn't waste the opportunity. He raced toward his cousin, circling around Vexus too quickly for the Sith Lord to target effectively. No! Vexus roared, abandoning finesse for raw power. He reached out with both hands, tearing metal from the walls and ceiling, creating a maelstrom of deadly projectiles that filled the hangar bay. Using his force awareness to enhance his already incredible reflexes, XLR-8 navigated the debris field, dodging and weaving toward the airlock where Gwen maintained her position. A final surge of speed carried him the last few yards. As he reached the airlock, the Omnitrix timed out once again, returning him to human form just as Gwen pulled him inside and sealed the hatch behind them. Get us out of here. Ben shouted to whoever was piloting. The ship disengaged from the airlock and accelerated away from Vexus's vessel just as secondary explosions began erupting along its hull. Through the viewport, Ben watched as the massive Sith craft began breaking apart, energy discharges connecting it to Earth's surface where the Nexus temples continued their relentless drain. In the pilot's seat, Kevin guided the ship to a safe distance. Cutting it a little close there, Tennyson. Couldn't help it, Ben replied, collapsing into a seat. Had a date with destiny. Tetra occupied the co-pilot's position, her injured shoulder bandaged but clearly still painful. Vexus, she asked simply. Ben shook his head. Still on the ship last I saw him. But he claimed he's transcended physical form, whatever that means. Some Sith develop techniques to preserve their consciousness beyond bodily death, Tetra explained grimly. If Vexus mastered such abilities, he may survive even this. Look! Gwen pointed out the viewport. Vexus's ship had begun to implode, the feedback loop reaching critical threshold. The Nexus temples on Earth's surface pulsed one final time before their energy connections snapped, causing each structure to collapse in on itself simultaneously. In orbit, the Sith vessel compressed to an impossibly small point before erupting in a blinding flash that forced them to shield their eyes. When the light faded, nothing remained, not debris, not radiation, just empty space where the massive craft had been. Did we win? Kevin asked after a moment of stunned silence. The Nexus points have collapsed, Tetra confirmed, checking sensor readings. The dimensional thinning is rapidly stabilizing. Earth's natural barriers are reasserting themselves. Ben stared at the empty space where Vexus's ship had been. He said this specific convergence only happens once in millennia. Even if he survived somehow, his plan is ruined. Then yes, Tetra said with cautious relief. For now, we have won. As the plumber ship descended toward Earth, Ben felt the weight of the past days finally settle on him. His body ached from the battles, his mind exhausted from constantly pushing his limits. Yet beneath the fatigue lay something new, a deeper connection to the Force, forged in the crucible of conflict. You did well, Tetra said quietly, moving to sit beside him. Few fully trained Jedi could have accomplished what you did today. Ben managed a tired smile. I had help. Good teachers, good friends. An impressive improvisation, she added. Reversing the energy flow through the Nexus points, not a strategy one would have considered. Yeah, well, turning the bad guy's tech against him is kind of my specialty, Ben replied. The Force just gave me new ways to do it. Gwen joined them, her own exhaustion evident but pride shining in her eyes. Grandpa's coordinating cleanup teams at all the Nexus sites. Apparently, they're just piles of weird rocks now, all the energy signatures are gone. And Vexus? Ben asked the question that still troubled him. Tetra's expression grew distant as she reached out through the Force, searching. I sense echoes. Disturbances that will take time to settle. But his immediate presence is gone from this plane. Good enough for me, Kevin called from the pilot's seat. Now, who's hungry? Saving the world works up an appetite. 3 days later, Ben stood in the forest clearing that had become their regular training ground. The afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows across the ground. In his hand, he held Tetra's lightsaber, carefully examining its construction. The Kyber crystal is the heart of the blade, Tetra explained, standing beside him. It resonates with the Force, amplifying and focusing energy through the emitter matrix. Ben activated the weapon, its blue blade humming to life. After the events with Vexus, Tetra had finally agreed to begin teaching him lightsaber techniques, recognizing that his progress in the Force had accelerated dramatically under pressure. It feels alive somehow, Ben noted, making a simple practice swing through the air. In many ways, it is, Tetra confirmed. The crystal chooses the wielder as much as the reverse. When you eventually construct your own, you'll understand the connection more deeply. The prospect of building his own lightsaber still seemed distant, but Ben appreciated that Tetra now spoke of it as an eventuality rather than a possibility. He deactivated the blade, returning the hilt to her with respect. So what happens now? Vexus is gone, the Nexus temples are destroyed, Earth is back to normal, well, normal for us anyway. Tetra accepted her weapon, securing it within her jacket. Now, we continue training. Vexus may be defeated, but his appearance confirms what I've long suspected, Earth is no longer isolated from the wider Force community of the galaxy. Others will come, for various reasons. More bad guys looking for the Omnitrix or Force-sensitive people. Ben guessed. Perhaps, Tetra acknowledged. But also potentially allies. Knowledge seekers. Perhaps even other survivors of the Jedi Purge, sensing the reawakening of the Force here. From across the clearing came the sounds of Gwen and Kevin arriving for their own training session. Gwen had developed remarkable skill in blending her mana abilities with Force techniques, creating hybrid applications neither tradition had explored before. Kevin, meanwhile, had refined his ability to channel Force energy through absorbed materials, creating specialized alloys that responded to his will in increasingly sophisticated ways. "We've created something new here," Tetra observed, watching the others approach. "Not quite Jedi, not quite plumber, but a blend of traditions uniquely suited to Earth's challenges." Ben nodded, understanding what she meant. The combination of alien technology like the Omnitrix with Force sensitivity created possibilities beyond what either system could achieve alone. "I've been thinking," he said as they walked to meet Gwen and Kevin. "What if we established some kind of formal training program for other Force sensitives who might be out there? With the Nexus temples gone, they might start manifesting abilities without understanding what's happening." Tetra looked surprised, then thoughtful. "A new order? Not Jedi, precisely, but something evolved from those teachings." "Exactly," Ben confirmed. "We could work with the plumbers for the alien tech side, you for the Force training, and create something built specifically for Earth's situation." "Ambitious," Tetra noted. "But perhaps necessary. The Force is awakening more widely now, I've sensed it since Vexus's defeat. Like a dam breaking after centuries of containment." As they reached the others, Ben activated the Omnitrix, cycling through his aliens thoughtfully. Each form now felt different to him through the Force, not just physically different, but energetically unique, offering distinct relationships with the universal energy field. "So, what's the training plan today?" Kevin asked, already absorbing a piece of the specialized metal he'd begun carrying with him everywhere. Ben looked to Tetra, then back at his friends. "Actually, I was thinking we might try something new. Something that combines all our abilities in ways even Vexus couldn't imagine." "I'm listening," Gwen said, a curious smile forming. Ben grinned, selecting Diamond Head on the Omnitrix. "Let me show you what I've been working on." In a flash of green light, he transformed. But instead of immediately taking action, Diamond Head closed his eyes, connecting deeply to the Force. The crystalline structure of his body began to glow with internal light, not the usual green of the Omnitrix, but a harmonious blue that matched the frequency of Tetra's lightsaber. "The Force flows through all living things," Ben said, echoing Tetra's earliest lessons. "Even the ones we transform into." As his friends watched in amazement, crystal formations grew from the ground around him, responding not just to Petrosapien abilities but to Force manipulation on a fundamental level. The structures formed perfect geometric patterns, creating a miniature version of what might someday become a training temple. "Yeah," Kevin said after a moment of stunned silence. "I think we're going to be okay." Tetra nodded, genuine pride in her expression. "Indeed. The Force is with us, and now, so is the Omnitrix." Diamond Head opened his eyes, the glow extending to illuminate the clearing as the sun began its descent toward evening. "And whatever comes next," he said with quiet confidence, "we'll face it together." Above them, stars began appearing in the darkening sky, countless worlds across multiple galaxies, some perhaps already aware of the unique power that had awakened on Earth. The convergence of the Omnitrix and the Force had changed everything, opening possibilities neither Ben Tennyson nor his enemies had imagined. But for now, in this peaceful clearing, four friends continued their training, preparing not just for threats, but for a future where Earth might stand as something new in the cosmic order. Not merely a backwater planet, but a nexus of innovation where technology and mystical energy combine to create something unprecedented. Ben Tennyson, hero, Omnitrix wielder, and now Force adept, smiled as he released his transformation, returning to human form. Whatever adventures awaited, he was ready. With the Omnitrix on his wrist and the Force flowing through him, the possibilities were truly limitless. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.